I still remember that summer like it was yesterday, though it's been years now. The heat was thick in the valleys, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes every breath feel heavy. I'd been thinking about my granddad's old hunting cabin up on the ridge above Black Mountain Gap for months. He built it himself back in the 70s, rough-hewn logs and a tin roof that sang in the rain. After he passed 15 years ago, the family let it sit. They said it was too far gone, too much work, but I couldn't stand the thought of it rotting away up there. I figured I'd drive up alone one Friday after my shift at the mill, spend the weekend clearing brush and patching what I could. Maybe make it a place to escape to again, like when I was a kid, and he'd take me hunting squirrels. The drive up was peaceful at first. The road wound narrow and steep, gravel crunching under my tires, dust kicking up in the rear view. I passed a few deer grazing at the edges, their eyes glowing red in the headlights like little embers. No other cars, no lights, just the dark shapes of the pines closing in. By the time I pulled up to the cabin, the sun was dipping low, painting the ridge in oranges and purples. The place looked worse than I remembered. Weeds choking the porch steps, vines crawling up the walls, windows coated in grime. I unloaded my tools and supplies, swept out the dust and mouse droppings, and got a fire going in the stone fireplace. The wood crackled warm, chasing away the evening chill. I sat on the porch with a lantern and a cold beer, listening to the crickets start their chorus and the wind whispering through the trees. It felt good, like coming home. As the stars came out, sharp and close in that high air, I leaned back in the old rocker Granddad left behind. The wood creaked under me, familiar. Around midnight, though, something shifted. The crickets went quiet all at once, like someone flipped a switch. Then I heard it, a soft crunch on the dry leaves off to the side of the cabin. Footstep. Pause. Another step. Not like a deer or bear, too even, too careful. Human, I thought. Maybe one of the neighbors from down the gap had seen my truck and come to check. "Hey," I called out, standing up. "That you, Earl?" My voice echoed off the ridge, swallowed by the dark. Nothing came back. Just another step. Closer now. My heart picked up a little, but I told myself it was nothing. Folks up here wander at night sometimes, coonskin cap hunters or kids sneaking smokes. I grabbed the lantern and shone it toward the tree line. The beam cut through the shadows, but all I saw were trunks and underbrush. The steps kept coming, slew circles around the cabin. Crunch, pause, crunch, sizing me up, like whatever it was wanted to get a good look without being seen. I backed inside, locked the door, though that old latch wouldn't stop much, and turned off the lantern to watch from the window. Moonlight spilled over the clearing, silver and cold. There, at the edge of the pines, a shape, tall, thin as a rail, standing perfectly still. No movement, no sound, just watching. I stared back, breath fogging the glass. It didn't have a face I could make out, just a silhouette against the trees. Could have been a person, sure, but something about the way it stood felt off, too rigid, like it wasn't breathing. My mind raced. Poacher, lost hiker, but why not call out? Why just stand there? I stayed put, heart hammering in my ears, waiting for it to move. Hours passed. The fire died to embers. The steps had stopped, but that shape never shifted, not an inch. When the first gray light of dawn crept over the ridge, it was gone, vanished like smoke. I went out careful, checking the ground. No tracks in the leaves, no broken twigs, nothing to show anyone had been there. The air felt normal again, birds starting to chirp.
I shook it off his nerves, maybe a trick of the light, finished my coffee, and got to work on the roof. That day was productive. I hammered down loose shingles, cleared the brush until my arms ached. By evening, the cabin looked better, almost livable. I built another fire, ate some beans from a can, and sat on the porch again. The quiet was deeper this time, the kind that presses in. Crickets again, wind in the pines. I tried to relax, but my eyes kept drifting to that spot at the tree line. Midnight came, and there it was, the footsteps, same as before, crunch on leaves, circling slow. I didn't call out this time, just watched from the window. The shape appeared right on cue, tall and thin, still a stone, watching me. I felt its gaze like a weight, even through the dark. I sat there all night, back against the wall, flashlight in hand. Come morning, gone again, no tracks. By the third night, I was on edge, slept fitful during the day, worked till my hands blistered. The cabin was shaping up, windows cleaned, porch swept, but I couldn't shake the feeling. That evening, I boarded up the windows loose just in case. Sat inside by the fire, door barred with a chair. The steps started early, around 11, louder this time, like it was getting bolder. Circling tighter, pausing at each corner of the cabin. I peeked through a crack in the boards. There it was, closer now, maybe 20 feet from the porch. Still no face, just that outline in the moonlight, watching. I whispered to myself, go away, just go, but it didn't. Hours dragged. My mind wandered to stories Granddad told around this same fire, old tales of watchers in the woods, folks who lived off the land, never coming down to town. Feral, he called them, but those were just stories to scat kids. The fourth night broke me. I tried to stay busy, chopping wood till dusk, but the dread built like a storm. I locked myself in early, fire roaring, but it didn't help. The footsteps came at 10, circling fast. Then the scratching started. At the door first, slow drags, like fingernails testing the wood. Scritch, pause, scritch. I froze, staring at the latch. It held, but the sound moved, along the walls, up to the windows, nails on glass, faint but deliberate, like it was trying to find a way in. I grabbed my granddad's old shotgun from the corner, loaded it with shaking hands. Get out, I yelled, voice cracking. The scratching stopped. Silence. Then a soft tap at the door, like a knuckle. Tap, tap. I aimed, finger on the trigger, but couldn't bring myself to shoot blind. The tapping went on for what felt like forever, patient, insistent. Finally it faded. I sat there till dawn, gone across my lap, listening to my own heartbeat. When the sun rose, I backed everything, didn't even board up proper. Drove down that gravel road as fast as I dared, dust flying, not looking back. Sold the place sight unseen a week later, some out-of-towner looking for a getaway. I didn't tell him about the watcher, didn't want to sound crazy, but I can't forget it. Nights now, in my house down in the valley, I wake up sweating, hear those footsteps in my dreams, circling my bed, feel that gaze through the window, tall and thin, waiting. Sometimes I think it's still up there on the ridge, patient as ever, and part of me wonders if one day I'll drive back, just to see if it's still watching, waiting for me to come home alone. The mountains have a way of pulling you back, you know, like they own a piece of you, and whatever's out there, I reckon it's got the rest.
I remember that October night in '09, like the fog never quite lifted from my head, even now. The air had that sharp, wet bite that comes with late fall in the mountains, cold enough to sting your nostrils, thick with the smell of damp leaves and coal dust and never quite washed out of the hollers. I'd pulled a double at the sawmill in Harlan, my hands still raw from handling green lumber, the scent of pine resin clinging to my jacket sleeves. My back ached in that deep, familiar way, and all I wanted was the warmth of our little house outside Lynch, Sarah's cooking, maybe a hot shower to rinse off the day's grime. But the main highway was snarled with a wreck. Some kid in a jacked-up Ford had flipped on the slick blacktop, and the detour signs were flashing orange in the headlights. 20 minutes saved, I told myself. Just the old coal haul road, the black seam cut off. I'd driven it a handful of times in daylight. It was nothing special. Cracked pavement, loose gravel, trees crowding in like they owned the place. I turned off the highway without a second thought. The road dropped fast into the gap, the truck's nose dipping as gravity took over. Fog rolled down off the ridge in slow, heavy waves, thick as soup, the kind that soaks into your clothes and stays there.
My high beams barely cut a tunnel 10 feet ahead. Beyond that, it was just swirling gray, swallowing the world. The heater hummed warm against my legs, but the glass kept fogging anyway. I had to wipe it with my sleeve every few seconds, leaving streaks of sawdust and sweat. The radio was tuned low to some AM station out of Knoxville, playing old country that crackled with distance. Hank Williams was halfway through "I'm So Lonesome I Could Cry" when the signal started to fray, static hissing like rain on hot tin. I twisted the knob, hunting for clarity, but it only got worse, white noise swallowing the music whole. Then, the voices came. At first, I thought it was Bleed Over, another station fighting for the frequency. Low, rough-edged talk, the way men speak when they've been underground all day and their throats are coated with dust. Shifts winding down, boys. Clock out clean. Don't leave nothing behind. The words were muffled like they were coming through a thick door, but clear enough to make my skin prickle. Then a name. My name. James T. Whitaker. You best get on up top before the roof comes. My full name, the way my mother used to call it when I was 10 and late for supper. The T standing for Thomas like it was a secret shame. My grip tightened on the wheel until the vinyl creaked. Coincidence, I told myself. CB chatter bouncing off the wet rock walls. But the voices kept coming, steady now, a whole crew talking over thermoses and sandwiches in the dark. I eased off the gas, tires crunching slower on the gravel patches. The fog pressed closer, muting the engine sound until it felt like I was moving underwater. Another voice, older, gravelly. "Jimmy, you left your light down there. Carbide's still burning. Better go fetch it." They laughed then, dry, tired chuckles that echoed inside the cab like they were sitting right behind me. I glanced in the rearview mirror. Empty seat, just the dark outline of my toolbox and the baby blanket Sarah had left back there that morning. The laughter faded, but the talking didn't. They started counting hours. 7 hours down, 5 to go. 8 hours now. Still got time, boys. The numbers landed heavy, like they were marking something I couldn't see. My heart was thudding against my ribs now, loud in my ears. I pulled over where the road widened a little, just past the old tipple foundation. Rusted steel beams half burying kudzu, fines thick as my wrist. I killed the engine. The cab went dead silent except for the faint tick-tick of metal cooling and the soft drip of fog from the pines overhead. The voices didn't stop. If anything, they got closer, more intimate, right there in the space with me. "Jimmy, Sarah's waiting," said she was tired of waiting. My wife's name hit like a slap. The fight we'd had that morning replayed word for word in their low tones. "You promised you'd be home early. The bills are piling up. I'm doing this alone, James." Her voice had cracked on my name. Quiet tears in the kitchen while I stood there dumb, too stubborn to apologize. I'd left without kissing her goodbye, just grabbed my lunch pail and walked out. Now the voices repeated it back to me, gentle, almost sorrowful. She said she was tired of waiting, Jimmy, and the little one's coming soon. You gonna be there? I threw the door open and stepped out fast. The cold slammed into me, wet and penetrating, soaking through my flannel in seconds. My boots sang a little in the soft shoulder mud. I popped the hood, the hinges groaning, and stared at the engine. Battery cables tight, wires where they should be. Nothing loose, nothing wrong. But the air felt wrong, heavier than it had any right to be, pressing down on my shoulders like wet wool. I had the distinct, crawling sensation that someone was standing right behind me, close enough to smell the coal dust on their breath, feel the heat of their body in the chill. I spun around. Nothing, just fog and the black dripping trees leaning in like silent witnesses. The voices kept talking, now from inside the cab, now drifting from the woods, now overlapping in a low chorus. Names I didn't know but somehow recognized. Leroy, Harlan, Tommy, names from the yellowed company rolls my uncle used to read aloud when he was drinking, the men who'd gone into the mine that morning in 32 and never come out. I threw the door open and stepped out fast. The cold slammed into me, wet and penetrating, soaking through my flannel in seconds. My boots sang a little in the soft shoulder mud. I popped the hood, the hinges groaning, and stared at the engine. Battery cables tight, wires where they should be. Nothing loose, nothing wrong. But the air felt wrong, heavier than it had any right to be, pressing down on my shoulders like wet wool. I had the distinct, crawling sensation that someone was standing right behind me, close enough to smell the coal dust on their breath,
feel the heat of their body in the chill. I spun around. Nothing, just fog, and the black, dripping trees leaning in like silent witnesses. The voices kept talking, now from inside the cab, now drifting from the woods, now overlapping in a low chorus. Names I didn't know but somehow recognized. Leroy, Harlan, Tommy. Names from the yellowed company rolls my uncle used to read aloud when he was drinking. The men who'd gone into the mine that morning in 32 and never come out. I threw the door open and stepped out fast. The cold slammed into me, wet and penetrating, soaking through my flannel in seconds. My boots sang a little in the soft shoulder mud. I popped the hood, the hinges groaning, and stared at the engine. Battery cables tight, wires where they should be, nothing loose, nothing wrong. But the air felt wrong, heavier than it had any right to be, pressing down on my shoulders like wet wool. I had the distinct, crawling sensation that someone was standing right behind me, close enough to smell the coal dust on their breath, feel the heat of their body in the chill. I spun around. Nothing, just fog, and the black, dripping trees leaning in like silent witnesses. The voices kept talking, now from inside the cab, now drifting from the woods, now overlapping in a low chorus. Names I didn't know but somehow recognized. Leroy, Harlan, Tommy. Names from the yellowed company rolls my uncle used to read aloud when he was drinking. The men who'd gone into the mine that morning in 32 and never come out. I threw the door open and stepped out fast. The cold slammed into me, wet and penetrating, soaking through my flannel in seconds. My boots sang a little in the soft shoulder mud. I popped the hood, the hinges groaning, 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 the hinges, the engine, the hinges groaning, 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 the hinges groaning.
I remember the winter of 2015, the way you remember a long fever dream. Everything muted, cold, and lingering too close to the bone. My Aunt Ruth had just come home from the hospital in Bristol after they removed a tumor from her lung the size of a walnut. The doctors said she was lucky, that it was caught early, but she came back quieter than I'd ever known her, moving slow, like the house itself was holding her up. She'd lived alone in that holler near the Virginia line since Uncle Ray passed in '98, in the same clapboard house her daddy built in the '40s. White siding gone gray from years of mountain weather, tin roof patched in places with mismatched sheets, a long front porch that sagged just enough to make you notice. I drove up from Kingsport to stay with her for a couple weeks, help with meals, drive her to follow-ups, keep the wood stove fed. I was 29 then, no kids, no real ties, and she was the closest thing I had to a mother after mine passed when I was small. The house smelled like it always had: old pine, wood smoke, the faint sweet rot of apples left too long in the root cellar. The floors creaked underfoot, boards worn smooth by generations of feet. Aunt Ruth spent most of her days in the recliner by the front window, quilt over her lap, watching the light change on the ledge across the hollow. She slept light, she said, because the pain meds made her dreams strange. I slept in the back bedroom, the one that used to be hers when she was a girl. The bed was narrow, the mattress thin, the quilt heavy with the scent of cedar from the chest at the foot. Outside, the nights were bitter, January cold that seeped through the walls and made the windows frost from the inside. The porch swing was the first thing I noticed when I arrived. It hung from thick chains bolted into the ceiling beams, painted white once but chipped down to bare wood in places. The seat was wide enough for two, slats worn smooth by decades of use. Aunt Ruth used to say it was the best place to sit and think, because the motion helped the thoughts settle. But even on still days when the air was dead, the chains would give a soft, rhythmic creak, slow, like someone shifting their weight. I'd always figured it was the house settling, or the wind finding a gap in the trees. I never asked. The first few nights were quiet. I'd build the fire high, make sure she had tea and her pills, then sit with her until she dozed off. I'd go to bed around 11, leaving the hall light on low. The house made its usual sounds, pipes ticking as they cooled, the wind brushing the eaves, the occasional pop of embers in the stove. I slept hard those first nights, the kind of deep sleep that comes after long drives and worry. Then came the night I woke at 2:03 a.m. I don't know what pulled me out of sleep, maybe a dream I couldn't remember, but my eyes opened to darkness and the unmistakable sound of the porch swing moving. Slow, steady, deliberate. The chains creaking in perfect rhythm, back and forth, like someone was sitting there rocking gently. I lay still, listening. The wind had died hours earlier. The trees outside were silent. No storm, no gusts, just the swing. I told myself it was the temperature dropping, the metal contracting, something mechanical. I closed my eyes again, willing sleep to take me back. It didn't. The rhythm was too even, too human. I sat up, the springs of the old bed groaning under me. The room was cold enough that my breath showed in faint clouds. I pulled on my socks and stepped into the hall, floorboards icy underfoot. The house was still except for that sound. Creak, pause, creak, pause. I moved to the front room, careful not to wake Ruth. The recliner was empty. She'd gone to bed around 10. I stood at the window, parted the lace curtain just enough to see the porch. The swing was moving. Empty. No one on it. The chains pulled taut, then slack, the seat tilting forward and back on its own, wood slats catching the pale moonlight. I watched, heart starting to thud heavy in my chest. 10 minutes passed, maybe more. I couldn't look away. The motion never faltered, never sped up, never slowed. Just that patient rocking, like someone had all night to sit and think. Then I heard the footsteps, soft, careful, on the porch boards. Not heavy, not hurried, bare feet, or maybe stocking feet, padding slow from the far end toward the swing. They circled once, twice, the rhythm matching the swing's sway. Then they stopped directly in front of it. The swing kept rocking. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, straining to see. Nothing, just moonlight on the boards, frost glittering on the rail. No shadow, no shape.
but the footsteps had been there, distinct, deliberate, close enough I could almost picture the small prints they might have left. I stayed at the window until the first gray light of dawn touched the ridge. The swing slowed, then stopped. The chains hung still. I checked the porch as soon as it was light enough. No footprints, no marks, nothing disturbed. Just frost and the old boards. I made coffee, started breakfast, tried to act normal. When Aunt Ruth woke, shuffling out in her robe, I asked her about the swing. Casual, like it was nothing. She looked at me a long moment, eyes tired but clear. "That swing belonged to your mama," she said. "My little sister. She died in '52. Pneumonia took her quick. She was 12. Used to sit out there every evening after supper, swinging till the mosquitoes came. Said it helped her think." She paused, stirring sugar into her coffee. "Sometimes when the nights are still, she comes back, just to sit. That's all, just to sit." I didn't know what to say. I'd heard the stories growing up, how my mother had been sickly, how she'd passed young, but no one ever mentioned the swing. Aunt Ruth didn't seem afraid, just resigned, like it was part of the house, part of the family. I nodded, changed the subject. But that night, and every night after, I couldn't sleep right. I started hearing other things. The soft click of the screen door latch, even though it was hooked shut. A small cough from the front room when the house was empty. The faint scent of lilac soap, the kind my grandmother used to keep in the dresser, drifting through the hall when no one was near. Once, around 3 in the morning, I heard humming, high, childlike, tuneless, coming from the porch. I didn't get up to look. I pulled the quilt over my head and waited for it to stop. The last night I stayed, I sat up in the front room with the light off, watching the window. The swing started moving at 1:47, same slow rhythm. I waited. The footsteps came again, softer than before, circling. They paused at the swing, then moved toward the door. I heard the boards creak right outside the window. Then nothing. The swing kept going until dawn. I left the next day, hugged Aunt Ruth goodbye, drove down the mountain road with the heater blasting and the radio on loud. I didn't go back for months. When I did visit again, Ruth was stronger, the tumor gone for good. She still sat in the recliner, still watched the ridge. The swing was there, still and silent in the daylight. But after dark, I never looked at it. I'd sit inside, curtains drawn, listening to the house settle. Sometimes I thought I heard the chains give a single soft creak, like someone shifting their weight, getting comfortable for a long sit. Aunt Ruth passed in 2021, quiet, at home, the way she wanted. The house went to a cousin who rents it out now. I haven't been back in years, but every winter, when the cold settles in and the nights stretch long, I find myself thinking about that swing, about the small weight that moves it, patient and gentle, about the sister I never knew, coming back to the only place that ever felt like home. I wonder if she's still waiting there, rocking slow, listening for someone to join her on the porch. And sometimes when the house is quiet and the wind is still, I hear the chains again, in my own head, soft and steady, like they're waiting for me to come sit a while, just to sit.
I remember that spring hike like it was etched into the mud itself, permanent and uninvited. It was early April 2017, the kind of weekend where the mountains tease you with warmth. Dogwoods bluing pink against the green haze of new leaves, but the air still carrying that crisp edge that says winter's not done whispering. I'd been cooped up too long in Beckley, staring at spreadsheets in a cubicle that smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Needed to get out, feel the trail under my boots, breathe something besides recycled air. The old fire trail near Clifftop had been my go-to since I was a kid, tagging along with my dad on scouting trips for the volunteer fire department. It snaked up the ridge from the Galley River overlook, 8 miles round trip if you pushed it, overgrown in spots but familiar as my own shadow. I told no one I was going, just grabbed my pack, laced up my LL Bean boots, and hit the trailhead by 9 a.m. Solo hikes were my reset button. No chatter, no schedules, just me in the woods. The trail started easy, gravel crunching underfoot as it climbed gentle from the parking lot. Sun filtered through the canopy in dappled patches, warming my neck where sweat started to bead. The smell hit me first, the rich, loamy earth waking up, mixed with the sharp tang of wild ramps poking through the leaf litter. Birds called lazy from the hickories, and every now and then a squirrel would bolt across the path, tail flicking like a warning. I set a steady pace, breathing deep, the pack light on my shoulders with just water, a sandwich, and my phone on airplane mode. No signal up here anyway, that's part of the point. About a mile in, the trail narrowed, ferns brushing my calves, and the ground softened into that red clay mud from last week's rain. My boots left clear prints, deep treads, spaced even for my 32-inch stride. Comforting, in a way, proof I was there, moving forward.
3 miles up, past the first false summit, where the ridge opens to a view of the new river snaking below like a silver vein, I noticed them. The mud was thicker there, churned by spring runoff into a shallow puddle that stretched across the path. My boot sank in first, sucking a little as I pulled free, leaving that familiar waffle pattern. But ahead, in the slick red mess, were other prints. Bare feet, large, man-sized, I guess, 11 or 12, deep enough to show the ball and heel, toes splayed wide like someone gripping for balance. They matched my stride exactly, left, right, same length, same spacing. I stopped dead, pack straps suddenly heavy, squatted down for a closer look. The edges were fresh, no crumbling, no water pooled in the hollows, no boot treads, no socks, just skin on mud, raw and deliberate. I laughed it off at first, a short bark that echoed off the rocks, some local joker maybe, pulling a prank on the trail cam they sometimes set up for poachers. But who hikes barefoot 3 miles up a fire trail? The laurel was just starting to thicken on the sides, thorns waiting to snag, and the rocks higher up were sharp as broken glass. I glanced back down the path. My own tracks were there, clear as day, boot prints fading into the drier ground below, reassuring. I straightened, wiped mud from my hands on my jeans, and kept going. Curiosity tugged harder than sense. The bear prints led on, veering slight around a downed oak, but never breaking rhythm. Around the next bend, where the trail switched back over a seep of scrum water, they were still there, deeper now, like whoever made them was leaning in, hurrying a little. I picked up my pace to match, boots thudding soft on the duff, ears straining for the snap of twigs or a cough from the underbrush. Nothing, just the wind sighing through the pines, carrying the faint, mineral tang of the river far below. By the 4th mile, the trail steepened, roots twisting across the path like veins. Sweat soaked my shirt, sticking a cold to my back when a breeze cut through. The bear prints kept appearing in every soft spot, muddy hollows, damp sand from eroded banks, always ahead, always just out of sight around the curve. I started talking to myself, low mutters to fill the quiet. "All right, buddy, you win. Good one. Where are you hiding?" No answer. The woods felt thicker here, the canopy closing low, filtering the light to a greenish gloom. Ferns crowded the edges, fronds unfurling like fingers. I stopped again at a wider patch of mud, this one churned like a churned-up garden bed. The prints were perfect mirrors of my stride, but bare. I pressed my boot next to one, size 10, lace tight. The barefoot was bigger, broader, the toes longer, like it belonged to someone who'd gone shoeless so long their feet spread wide. A chill crawled up my spine, not from the sweat cooling, but from the sudden, sharp awareness that I wasn't alone. Someone was up here, walking my path, echoing my steps. But why hide? Why not show themselves? I pressed on, unease settling like a stone in my gut. The air grew heavier, laced with the musty rot of old leaves and something earthier like turned soil after a grave digging. Around the 5-mile mark, the trail dipped into a saddle between ridges, laurel hell closing in thick, waist-high thickets, branches thorny and unyielding. No sane person goes off trail there, it's a maze that dumps you cliff-side or worse. But the prints did. They veered sharp zeft straight into the green tangle, stomping deliberate through the mud at the edge. I followed to the brink, peering in. The ground was soft, churned, the bare impressions leading deeper, disappearing under the fronds. No way, not barefoot. Thorns would shred skin to ribbons. I called out then, voice cracking a little. "Hey, you okay in there? Trail's this way." Echoes bounced back empty. Birds had gone quiet too. The wind hushed. Just the trick of water somewhere deep in the laurel, slow and irregular. That's when the real twist hit. I turned back to retrace my steps, needing to see my own trail out. The path looked the same. Roots, ferns, the faint scar of old fire scars on the trees. But my boot prints, gone, erased. The mud where I'd walked hours before was smooth now, undisturbed. Like fresh rain had washed it clean. No treads, no divots, not even a scuff. Like I'd never been there. My heart slammed up into my throat, hot and sour. I spun full circle, boots slipping in the duff. Looked down there, faint in the drier soil. The bear prints continued behind me now, overlaying where mine should have been there. Same stride, same depth. They'd been walking in my steps the whole way, silent, matching me print for print. But I was wearing boots. I was the one making noise. Panic hit like a gut punch. I bolted back, bouncing hard against my back, branches whipping my face as I tore down the trail. Thorns snagged my chains, drawing thin lines of thought out my calves, but I didn't care. Breath came in ragged gasps, lungs burning with the cold air. Every bend I expected to see a figure ahead, tall, barefooted, turning to meet me with eyes that knew too much. The river view flashed by in a blur, the mud puddle splashing underfoot. My mind raced. Poacher, hermit, some meth head living off grid mimicking me for sport. But the prints, those damn prints, erased mine like they were claiming the trail, like I was the intruder. Sweat stung my eyes, the pack straps chafing raw. I ran until my legs shook, until the trailhead sign loomed through the trees like salvation. Collapsed against my truck, key fumbling in the lock, door slamming shut behind me. Drove down the mountain, white knuckles, windows down to gulp the highway air. Called a buddy that night over beers, laughed it off, his trail magic gone wrong. But sleep didn't come easy. Dreams of bare feet padding behind me, close enough to feel the warmth of them. Next morning I went back with a ranger friend, unofficial, just to check. The trail was pristine, no prints bare or booted, mud smoothed over, ferns undisturbed. He chalked it to rain, but there'd been none. I hiked still, but never alone on that fire trail. Always someone at my back, boots or not. And sometimes when the ground softens after a shower and I'm out on easier paths, I glance down, wonder if I'll see them again. Those large, bare impressions, matching my stride exactly, leading ahead or maybe following now, waiting for the day I step off the path, into the laurel, and find out whose feet they really were, or worse, realize they've been mine all along.
I remember that November night in 2013, the way some people remember the exact moment they heard bad news. Sharp, cold, and impossible to shake loose. I'd been pulling doubles at the sawmill outside Boone for weeks, The kind of shifts that leave your hands smelling like fresh-cut pine and motor oil even after you shower twice. The mill ran late that night because a blade seized up, and by the time we got it fixed and cleaned the floor, it was pushing 1 a.m. The parking lot was empty except for my old Ford F-150, frost already forming on the windshield in thin, feathery patterns. I scraped it off with a credit card, climbed in, cranked the heat, and started the long drive down the mountain toward my place in Valley Crucis. 20-some miles of winding two-lane blacktop, mostly empty at that hour, with the Blue Ridge Parkway running parallel for stretches before dropping off toward the hollows. The fog rolled in thick as soon as I left the mill lot. Not the light mist you get in the valleys, real mountain fog, heavy and low, swallowing the road in gray curtains. My high beams turned the stuff into a glowing wall. I had to switch to low just to see the yellow lines. The heater blew warm against my legs, but the cab still felt chilled, like the cold had seeped into the upholstery and was waiting for me to relax. I kept the radio off, too much static anyway, and listened instead to the tires humming on the damp pavement, the occasional slap of wet leaves under the wipers. The road climbed first, then dropped in long sweeping curves past dark stands of hemlock and rhododendron. No other cars, no taillights ahead, just me, the fog, and the ridge looming somewhere to my left like a silent shoulder. About 5 miles in, near the pull-off where the parkway saw it, a pale light, small and steady, floating in the dark behind me. Not headlights, not brake lights, smaller, softer, like someone holding a lantern at arm's length, yellow-white, flickering just enough to suggest flame behind glass. It hung there maybe 50 yards back, keeping perfect pace with my truck. I blinked, rubbed my eyes with the heel of my hand. Long shift, tired eyes, I told myself. But it didn't vanish. It bobbed gently, like the person carrying it was walking at a steady clip, matching my 35 miles an hour without effort. I pressed the gas a little, the truck surged forward, engine note rising. The light stayed exactly where it was, neither falling behind nor closing the gap. I eased off the accelerator, slowing to 25. The light drifted closer, smooth as if on rails, until it filled the lower half of the rear view. I could see the faint corona around it now, the way it lit the fog in a soft halo. My heart started to thud, not fast yet, but heavy. I rolled the window down a crack. Cold air rushed in, smelling of wet pine and damp earth. No sound, no footsteps, no engine, no voice calling out. Just the light, floating there like it had all night to follow. I sped up again, pushing 50 on a straight stretch where the road hugged the cliffside. The light kept up without strain. I could see it better now. Not electric, not a phone screen. Definitely a flame. Lantern glass, maybe kerosene. The kind old-timers still use for barn work. 20 miles of road stretched ahead, most of it twisting through hollows where cell service died, and houses sat dark. I tried to tell myself it was another driver, somebody with their brights off, tailing me for the curves. But no high beams would look like that. No car would bob. No car would hold distance so perfectly, like it knew exactly how fast I was going. I slowed to a crawl at the next sharp bend, tires crunching on gravel shoulder. The light closed the gap again, drifting until it was maybe 30 feet back, close enough that I could almost make out the shape around it. Tall, thin, shoulders hunched against the cold. Or maybe that was just the fog playing tricks. I hit the gas hard, tires spinning a second before catching. The truck lurched forward. The light followed, smooth, unhurried. I kept glancing in the mirror, breath shallow, the cab suddenly too small. Sweat prickled under my jacket despite the chill pouring through the open window. I talked to myself out loud, low, steady. It's nothing, just keep driving, get home. But the words sounded thin, swallowed by the fog. The road dropped into a deeper hollow, trees closing overhead like a tunnel. The fog thickened until I could barely see the guardrail. I drove on faith and memory, knowing the next turn was coming, then the old iron bridge over the creek. The light stayed with me, never wavering, never passing. I started counting miles on the odometer, 10, 12, 15. Each time I thought it would peel off at a side road, it didn't. It just kept pace, patient, like it had nowhere else to be. Near the 18-mile mark, where the pavement turned to fresh blacktop, and the houses started to appear, dark windows, porch lights off, I finally lost it, or thought I did. The light fell back a little, then steadied again. I turned onto my gravel drive too fast, stones pinging under the undercarriage, headlights sweeping the yard. The house was dark. I'd forgotten to leave the kitchen light on. I killed the engine, sat there listening to the ticks of cooling metal, heart hammering so loud it drowned out the crickets. I looked in the rear view. The light was still there.
hovering at the edge of the yard where the gravel met the grass, right where the woods began, not moving closer, not retreating, just floating, soft and steady, like someone holding a lantern and waiting politely for an invitation. I didn't get out right away. I sat for 10 minutes, maybe 15, watching it in the mirror. No flicker, no wind to sway it, just that pale glow cutting through the fog like it had its own little bubble of light. Finally, I grabbed my lunchbox, opened the door slow, and stepped out. Cold hit hard, biting through my jeans. I walked to the porch without looking back, fumbled the key into the lock, got inside and bolted the door, turned on every light in the house, kitchen, hall, living room, until the place was bright as day. I stood at the front window, curtains parted, staring out. The light was gone. Nothing but fog and the dark shapes of the trees. No tracks in the gravel, no boot prints, no sign anyone had been there. I didn't sleep much. Lay on the couch with the TV on mute, watching the ceiling, listening for footsteps on the drive. Nothing came. Morning came gray and damp. I went out at first light, coffee in hand, walked the yard slow. The gravel was smooth, undisturbed, no tire marks but mine, no footprints in the soft grass at the edge of the woods, just frost glittering on the blades, and the faint smell of kerosene lingering in the air, or maybe that was my imagination. For weeks after, I checked every morning, walked the perimeter of the yard, looked for signs, broken twigs, flattened grass, anything, nothing. I started leaving the porch light on when I went to work, even though it felt foolish. I drove with the radio loud, windows up, eyes flicking to the mirror more than the road. Sometimes on clear nights when the fog stayed high, I'd see nothing. Other times, especially when the weather turned damp and the moon was low, I'd catch a flicker in the rear view, pale, distant, gone before I could focus. Once, coming home late again, I slowed at the turnoff and waited. The light appeared, far back, bobbing like before. I drove fast, didn't stop until the house lights were in sight. I still live in that house, still drive those roads. The mill closed a few years back. I work construction now, closer to home. But every November when the fog rolls in thick and the nights stretch long, I feel it. Not always in the mirror. Sometimes just a prickle on the back of my neck, like someone's walking close behind me on the empty road. I don't stop to look anymore. I just keep driving, windows up, radio off, waiting for the glow to appear again, waiting to see if it decides to follow all the way to the porch this time, or if it's already there, patient in the dark at the edge of the yard, lantern raised, waiting for me to come out and ask who it is. I don't know if I ever will, but I know it's still out there, and it remembers the way home.
I remember booking that cabin near the Nantahala Gorge in late October, like it was the answer to everything. I'd been stuck in Asheville for months, staring at a blank screen in a one-bedroom apartment that smelled faintly of mildew and takeout, words refusing to come. The deadline for my novel was breathing down my neck, and I needed quiet, real quiet, the kind that presses in and forces you to listen to your own thoughts. The listing on the vacation site was perfect. Remote mountain cabin, fully furnished, no neighbors for miles. Ideal for writers seeking solitude, secluded on private acreage overlooking the gorge. Photos showed a small log structure with a stone chimney, wide porch, and windows that looked out over nothing but trees and mist. No Wi-Fi, no cell service, no distractions. I paid for a full week, packed my laptop, notebooks, coffee, and enough canned food to last longer if I decided to stay. Drove up the winding road from Andrews on a gray afternoon, the leaves already turning brittle reds and golds, the air sharp with the promise of frost. The cabin sat at the end of a mile-long gravel drive that narrowed to 2 ruts before it reached the clearing. The place looked smaller in person, single story with a half-loft upstairs, dark logs weathered to almost black, tin roof patched in places with newer sheets that caught the last light. A woodpile leaned against the side, split and dry. Inside smelled of old pine and linseed oil. The main room had a stone fireplace, a worn sofa, a small kitchen with a propane stove, and a ladder to the loft where a double bed waited under a slanted ceiling. I unloaded my things, built a fire, made coffee in a battered percolator, and sat at the scarred oak table with my notebook open. The silence was thick, broken only by the pop of the fire and the distant rush of the gorge far below.
For the first few hours, it felt like exactly what I needed. Words came slow but steady. I went to bed early, tired in that goo way, the kind that comes from fresh mountain air and purpose. I woke around 2 in the morning to the sound of furniture moving downstairs. At first, I thought it was the house settling, the old timbers groaning as the temperature dropped. But the sounds were too deliberate. A chair leg scraping across floorboards, slow and heavy, like someone dragging it to a different spot. Then a door opening, soft hinges, a latch clicking shut. Another scrape, closer to the staircase this time. My heart kicked up, but I lay still, listening. The fire had burned down to embers. The loft was dark, except for the faint orange glow rising from below. I told myself it was animals, maybe a raccoon that got in through a loose board, knocking things around. I waited. The noises stopped. Silence settled again, thick as the fog outside. I stayed in bed, eyes open, until the first gray light touched the skylight. When I finally crept down the ladder, flashlight in hand, the main room was exactly as I'd left it. Chairs at the table, sofa undisturbed, doors latched. But the air was different, thicker, warmer, laced with the unmistakable smell of pipe tobacco. Old, sweet, the kind my grandfather used to smoke in his den. It hung heavy, like someone had just set the pipe down and walked away. I opened windows, aired the place out. The smell faded slowly, reluctantly. I told myself it was residual from years, maybe the previous renter smoked inside despite the rules. I built the fire back up, made breakfast, and tried to write. The words came harder now, distracted. I kept glancing at the staircase, at the front door. By afternoon, I was tired of my own jumpiness. I hiked down to the gorge overlook, let the roar of the water drown out my thoughts. Came back at dusk, built a bigger fire, ate soup from a can, and went to bed early again. Sleep came fitful. Around the same time, do something, I woke to voices. Low murmurs drifting up from the kitchen. Not loud enough to make out words, just the cadence of conversation, 2, maybe 3 people talking quietly over coffee or cards. A man's voice, deep and measured, a woman answering softer, patient. The occasional pause, like they were listening to something outside. I sat up in the dark loft, sheets tangled around my legs, pulse loud in my ears. Firelight flickered on the ceiling beams, throwing long shadows. I stayed perfectly still, straining to hear. The voices went on for 20 minutes, maybe half an hour. Comfortable, domestic, the way a family talks late at night when the day's work is done. No urgency, no anger, just life going on below me. I didn't go down. I couldn't bring myself to climb the ladder, to step into that room and see nothing. Instead, I locked the loft door, flimsy thing, just a hook and eye, and sat on the edge of the bed, flashlight gripped tight, waiting for them to stop. They did, eventually. The The murmurs faded like a radio tuning out. Silence returned, colder than before. I didn't sleep again that night, lay there until dawn, listening to the house breathe. When light finally came through the windows, I went down slow. The kitchen table was empty, no dishes, no coffee rings. But the pipe smoke was back, stronger, fresher, like someone had lit up right before I woke. I checked the stove, the fireplace, nothing, no ash, no burn marks. I packed my notebook, made coffee I couldn't drink, and tried to convince myself it was imagination, stress, isolation playing tricks. I hiked again that day, longer this time, pushing until my legs ached, hoping exhaustion would quiet my mind. It didn't. The third night was worse. I decided to leave the next morning, early, before the fog rolled back in. I told myself one more night. I built the fire high, sat on the sofa with a book I didn't read, and waited. Around 1:30, the furniture started again, chair legs scraping, a cabinet door opening and closing with a soft thud. Then the voices returned, closer to the staircase this time. The man said something low. The woman laughed, gentle, tired. Then a new sound, a child's voice. High, bright, laughing like they'd just been tickled. It cut through the quiet like a bell. My stomach dropped. The laughter went on for a minute, joyful, then shifted, turned into a small, hiccuping cry. Not a scream, just the soft, heartbroken cry of a child who doesn't understand why something hurts. It came from right below me, in the kitchen, close enough I could almost picture the scene. A little girl in pajamas, rubbing her eyes, being shushed by parents who sounded so ordinary, so real. I didn't go down. I couldn't. I sat frozen on the sofa, book forgotten, flashlight off, waiting for them to stop. The crying quieted after a while, faded into murmurs again. Then silence. I stayed there until the fire died to coals and the room grew cold.
I remember that trip to the headwaters of the new river, like the woods never quite let me leave. It was late September 2018, the kind of early fall where the days stay warm enough to hike in shirt sleeves, but the nights drop fast and sharp, frost rimming the grass by dawn. I'd been feeling the pull to get out for weeks. Work at the mill had slowed. My marriage was fraying in quiet ways neither of us wanted to name yet. And the house felt too small, too full of unspoken things. Camping alone had always been my way of resetting. Just me, a tent, a small fire, and enough trail to walk until my thoughts settled. The headwaters area up near the Virginia line is remote. Old logging roads that fade into single-track paths. Rhododendron thickets. The river starting as a thin, cold trickle between mossy rocks. Few people go there outside hunting season. That's what I wanted. Empty. I drove up Friday after work. Truck bed loaded with my old Kelty pack. Tent. Sleeping bag rated to 20 below. And enough freeze-dried meals to last 4 days. The last pavement ended at a Forest Service gate. I parked in the pull-off, shouldered the pack, and started walking. The trail was narrow, overgrown with ferns brushing my legs. The air thick with the smell of wet hemlock and decaying leaves. I hiked until dusk, found a flat spot near the river where the bank widened into a small clearing. The water murmured soft over stones, constant, like breathing. I set up a tent quick, stakes in the soft earth, rain fly taut, then built a fire in the old stone ring someone had left years before. The flames caught fast on dry birch bark. I ate beans from a tin, watched the stars sharpen overhead, and felt the knot in my chest loosen a little. For the first time in months, the quiet felt kind. I crawled into the tent around 10, zipped the door tight, and fell asleep to the river's low song. Sometime in the deep hours, maybe 3, maybe 4, I woke to my name. Soft. Not a shout. Just a voice calling from the trees. Calm and close. Like a neighbor leaning over a fence. Daniel. My full name. The way my mother used to say it when I was late coming in. I lay still, heart suddenly wide awake. The river kept its steady murmur. No wind moved the trees. I waited. Silence. Then again the same voice. Patient. A little closer. Daniel. Not angry. Not urgent. Just saying it like he knew I'd hear. I didn't answer. Instinct kept my mouth shut. I eased the zipper down an inch. Peered out. Moonlight silvered the clearing. The fire pit cold and black now. No shape in the trees. No movement. Just the dark wall of rhododendron and the faint gleam of the river. I zipped back up, lay down, and stayed perfectly still, listening. Minutes passed. Then the voice came a third time, softer, almost conversational. Daniel, you hear me? It sounded like it was right outside the tent. Close enough I could have reached through the nylon and touched the speaker. My pulse hammered in my throat. I stayed quiet. The voice waited, patient as stone. Then nothing. No footsteps retreating. No rustle. Just the river again. I didn't sleep after that. Laid there until gray light seeped through the mesh. Every small sound amplified. The drip of condensation on the rainfly. The occasional snap of a twig far off. When dawn came, I unzipped the tent slow.
stepped out into the cold. The fire pit was as I'd left it, ashes gray and undisturbed. But fresh ash lay on top, fine, white, warm when I held my hand close. Someone had built a small fire in the night, right there, while I slept 10 feet away. My pack sat where I'd propped it against a tree. The top flap was open. I knew I'd cinched it tight before bed. I knelt, heart sinking. The photo was gone. The one I kept in the inside pocket. Me, Sarah, and our daughter Ellie. Taken last summer at the county fair. Ellie grinning with cotton candy on her cheek. Sarah's arm around my waist. Her smile the soft one she saved for when the camera wasn't looking. I'd carried it every trip since. A small anchor. Now the pocket was empty. Nothing else missing. No food. No knife. No wallet. Just the photo. I packed fast, hands shaking. Broke camp. Shouldered the load. And hiked out without stopping. The trail felt different in daylight. Narrower. The trees pressing closer. Every rustle made me flinch. I kept glancing back, half expecting to see a figure standing where the path curved, watching me go. Nothing. Just woods and the river fading behind me. I reached the truck by noon. Drove down the mountain with the windows up. Radio loud to drown the quiet. I told myself it was a hiker. Some drifter who saw my fire the day before and got curious. But the voice had known my name, my full name, and the fire. Warm ashes, deliberate. And the photo. I didn't tell Sarah. Didn't want to hear the worry in her voice. Or worse, the doubt. We were already walking on eggshells. I kept the house lights on at night. Checked the locks twice. Weeks passed. The photo haunted me. How he knew to take that one thing. The one thing that mattered. I started sleeping with the bedroom door open, listening for footsteps on the porch. Then the letter came. It arrived on a Tuesday. Plain white envelope. No return address. My name in the P.O. box in careful block letters. Inside, nothing but the photo. No note. No words. Just Ellie's smile staring up at me. The fair lights blurry in the background. The edges were slightly curled, like it had been handled a lot. I sat at the kitchen table with it in my hands for a long time. Sarah was at work. Ellie at daycare. The house was quiet. I could hear the clock.
I still drive that stretch of Route 52 sometimes, but never at night, and never alone. Back then, in the fall of 2014, I made the trip from Welch to Eager every weekend without thinking twice. My sister lived down in Eager with her husband and 2 boys, and I'd go see them after work on Friday, stay through Sunday supper, then head back up the mountain before dark on Monday. The old back road, folks just called it the county cut, was faster than the interstate by 20 minutes if you knew the turns. Narrow, winding, blacktop cracked in places and patched with gravel, but familiar. I'd driven it 100 times since I got my license. Knew every dip, every hairpin, every spot where the trees leaned close enough to brush the mirror. The radio picked up static mostly, but sometimes a weak AM station out of Bluefield played old country. Hank, Patsy, the ones my daddy used to hum. That Friday it rained hard all day, the kind of steady, soaking rain that turns the hillsides to mud and makes the road shine like oil. I left the mill at 5:30, still in my work clothes, the cab smelling of sawdust and diesel. The rain came down in sheets by the time I turned off the main highway onto the county cut. Headlights cut tunnels through the gray, wipers slapping rhythmically. The first few miles were the same as always, past the old company store foundation, the rusted tipple skeleton, the pull-off where kids used to park and drink. Then something shifted. It was subtle at first. The curve after the second bridge felt tighter than I remembered, the guardrail closer to the passenger door. I slowed down, thinking maybe the rain was playing tricks on depth perception. But the next bend was sharper too, the trees crowding in until branches scraped the roof like fingernails. I checked the rear view. Nothing but rain and dark. No taillights behind me, no headlights coming on. Just the road narrowing, the pavement looking older, the cracks deeper, like the blacktop hadn't been touched since the mines shut down in the 80s. I kept going, telling myself it was fatigue. I'd pulled a double shift. The mile markers started appearing wrong. I passed 12, then 11, then 10. Fine. But when I hit what should have been 9, the next one was 11 again. I blinked, wiped fog from the inside of the windshield. 11, then 12. Backward. The numbers were climbing as I drove forward. My stomach dropped slow, like a stone settling in deep water. I pulled over where the shoulder widened a little, just past a stand of hemlock that looked taller, denser than before. Killed the engine. The rain hammered the roof, steady, insistent. I stepped out into the cold, colder than it should have been in early October, sharp enough to bite through my jacket. The air smelled different too, not just wet asphalt and pine, but something older, like coal dust and damp earth after a long winter. Quiet. Too quiet. No crickets, no frogs, no distant train whistle, just the rain and my own breathing. I walked to the front of the truck, headlights still on, casting long beams through the downpour. The road looked the same potholes, same faded yellow lines, but the trees were closer, branches hanging lower, leaves darker, almost black. I looked back the way I'd come. The road curved out of sight, swallowed by fog and night. I got back in, slammed the door, locked it, turned the key. The engine coughed with a cough. The radio, which I'd left off, suddenly hummed to life. Not static, music, clear as day. An old gospel quartet singing Will the Circle Be Unbroken, voices thin and tinny, the way stations sounded before digital. The DJ came on after the song. Deep, slow drawl. No name, just "This is WMON 1340 on your dial," playing the old favorites for the folks still listening out there in the dark. WMON hadn't broadcast since the 70s. The station tower was torn down when I was a kid. I turned the dial. Nothing else came in. Just that station, looping the same playlist. Jim Reeves, Loretta Lynn, songs my grandmother used to play on Sunday mornings. I drove again, faster now, tires hissing on the wet road. The mile markers kept climbing backward, 15, 16, 17, like time was running in reverse. The dashboard clock blinked 2:17, but I'd left work at 5:30. Hours had vanished. The rain never let up. The trees never thinned. I passed places that shouldn't have been there. An old wooden bridge I'd never seen. A faded sign for a coal camp that burned down in '69. A pull-off with a rusted phone booth that hadn't existed since the 80s. I talked to myself, low and steady. Just keep driving. He'll hit pavement. He'll hit eager. He'll see the lights. But the road kept changing. Curves I didn't remember. Hills steeper. The gorge on the right deeper, blacker. The voice on the radio started mentioning names, mine included. "Daniel Ray, you still out there? Folks are waiting. Don't keep 'em long." My full name, the way only family ever said it. Then my sister's name, my nephew's. Details they shouldn't know. The fight I'd had with my wife that morning. The way I'd left without saying goodbye.
the promise I'd made to fix the porch stat before winter. I drove for what felt like forever. The fuel gauge dropped slow, steady. The radio kept playing. Same song, same DJ, same mentions of my name, softer each time, like he was getting tired of waiting. I passed the same rusted bridge 3 times, the same sign for the burned camp, the road looping, or maybe folding in on itself. I stopped counting miles, stopped looking at the clock, just drove.
I remember the summer of 2019, the way you remember a bruise that never quite fades, tender, discolored, always there when you press on it. My Uncle Harlan had been living alone in the old farmhouse near the Cumberland Gap since Aunt May passed in 12, and the place was starting to show its age. The roof leaked in heavy rains, the porch sagged, and the well pump groaned like it was tired of life. He called me in June, voice rough over the phone, asking if I could come up for a couple weeks to help with repairs. I was between jobs, fresh off a bad breakup, and the idea of mountain air sounded better than another month staring at apartment walls in Knoxville. I packed a duffel, my toolbox, and enough coffee to last a siege, drove the winding 2-lane up through the gap, past the tourist traps and the Civil War markers, until the pavement turned to gravel and the trees closed in like old friends who don't quite trust you anymore. The house sat on a gentle rise overlooking a narrow hollow, white clapboard gone gray, tin roof patched with mismatched sheets, 2 stories with a narrow staircase and bedrooms tucked under the eaves. Uncle Harlan met me on the porch, thinner than I remembered, shirt sleeves rolled over forearms still corded from years of hard work. We didn't talk much about May, or about how the place felt emptier without her. We just got to work, patching shingles, clearing gutters, scraping paint. Evenings we sat on the porch with cold beers, watching the light drain from the ridge, listening to the crickets and the occasional truck grinding up the road below. The house smelled like old wood, linseed oil, and the faint sweet of pipe tobacco Harlan still smoked on the back steps, though he'd promised May he'd quit. I slept in the guest room on the 2nd floor, the one that used to be my cousin Tommy's. Narrow bed, thin mattress, window facing the side yard where the grass gave way to black woods. No tree branches near enough to scrape the glass, no porch roof below, just a straight drop to the ground. The first few nights were quiet. I slept hard, worn out from days of climbing ladders and hauling lumber. The house made its usual sounds, floorboards settling, pipes ticking as they cooled, the wind brushing the eaves, but nothing that kept me awake. Then came the night I woke to tapping, soft at first, like a fingernail against the pane. Tap, pause, tap. I lay still, eyes open in the dark, thinking it was a branch, though I knew there wasn't one. The sound came again, patient, deliberate. Tap, tap, tap. 3 times, even rhythm, like someone knocking politely. I sat up, sheets sliding off, the room cold enough that my breath showed faint in the moonlight. The window was a pale rectangle, curtains open because the heat had been thick that day. I swung my legs over the side, bare feet on the floorboards, and crossed to the glass, looked out. Nothing. Just the dark yard, the black wall of trees, the faint silver of the brass. No one. No ladder. No face. I stood there a long minute, listening. Silence. Then the tapping returned, slow, steady, right in front of me. Tap. Pause. Tap. I pressed my forehead to the cold glass, straining to see down. Nothing moved. The sound was coming from the outside. Impossible. Insistent. I backed away, heart starting to thud heavy. Sat on the bed, staring at the window. The tapping stopped. I waited. Minutes dragged. Then it came again. Softer. Almost curious. Tap. Tap. I got up, grabbed my phone, flashlight app on, beam shaking in my hand, and approached the window. Shone the light out. The yard was empty, grass still, trees still. But when I tilted the beam down, something caught the edge of the light. A small handprint on the glass, palm flat,
fingers spread, child-sized, fresh, no condensation around it, like it had been pressed there warm. I blinked. It was gone. I wiped the glass with my sleeve. Nothing. Just my own reflection staring back, pale and wide-eyed. I didn't sleep after that. Sat on the floor with my back to the wall, phone clutched like a weapon, listening. The tapping didn't come again that night. When dawn grayed the sky, I went downstairs, made coffee with shaking hands. Harlan was already up, frying eggs. I didn't mention it. What would I say? I dreamed a kid knocked on a second-floor window. I worked all day, harder than necessary, trying to sweat the unease out. But the house felt different now, quieter, watchful. The stairs creaked when no one climbed them. The doors settled with soft clicks. The second night was worse. I went to bed early, exhausted, telling myself it was a one-time thing. Left the curtains drawn tight. Around 2 a.m., the tapping woke me again. Same rhythm, same patience. I lay there, hard hammering, waiting for it to stop. It didn't. It went on for 10 minutes, 15, slow and steady. I got up, walked to the window, pulled the curtain back an inch. The glass was dark. I shone the flashlight. Nothing. Then I looked closer, really looked. A face was pressed to the pane on the other side. Pale skin, almost translucent, eyes wide and dark, staring straight in. Child's face. Thin cheeks, hair plastered wet against the forehead, mouth slightly open, like it was trying to speak through the glass. No breath fogging the window, just those eyes, locked on mine. I blinked. The face vanished, gone like smoke. I stood frozen, breath shallow, the flashlight beam trembling across empty glass. I checked the latch, locked, looked down. No ladder, no scaffolding, nothing but 20 feet of air to the ground. I backed away, sat on the bed, didn't move until morning. At breakfast, I asked Harlan about the room, casual. Ever have trouble with kids around here? Like playing pranks? He looked at me over his coffee, eyes tired. Long pause. Then he said, quiet. That room was Tommy's. He was 8. Fell from that window in 78. Screen was loose. He leaned out to watch fireflies. Lost his balance. Gone quick. I never fixed the latch right after. Figured it didn't matter. He looked out the window, voice flat. Sometimes I hear tapping up there. Thought it was the house settling. Never looked too close. He didn't say more. Didn't need to. I spent the day working in silence, mind turning. That night I didn't go upstairs. Packed my sleeping bag, moved to the truck in the driveway, reclined the seat, locked the doors, left the dome light on low. Slept fitful, waking every hour to check the mirrors. The house loomed dark against the ridge, windows black. No tapping, no face. But in the morning, when I went back in to get my things, I checked the window from outside. Small handprints on the glass, 5 of them, palm flat, fingers spread, child-sized, fresh, like someone had pressed there all night, waiting. I left that afternoon, hugged Harlan goodbye, told him I'd be back to finish the roof. We both knew I wouldn't. I drove down the mountain road with the windows up, radio loud, heart still thudding. I haven't been back since. Harlan passed last year, quiet, alone. The house is empty now, or supposed to be. Sometimes driving through the gap on the way to other places, I slow down when I see the turnoff. I don't take it. But on still nights when the moon is bright and the air is cool, I wake up hearing it. Soft tapping on glass, patient, waiting. Not angry, not loud, just there. Like a child who never left the room, leaning out the window, watching for someone to notice, watching for me to look back. I don't know if it's Tommy. I don't know what he wants. I just know the handprints were real. And sometimes when I'm alone, and the house is quiet, I feel those small palms pressed against my own windows, patient, waiting for me to open the curtain and look. I never do, but I know they're there. And part of me wonders how long I can keep driving past that turnoff before I turn in, walk up those stairs, and finally meet the eyes that have been watching all these years, waiting for me to say hello, or goodbye.
I remember the weekend I went up to Craggy Gardens in the fall of 2021. Like the chill never quite left my bones. My father had been talking about the old family plot for years, how the brush had taken it over since Grandma died, how the stones were leaning, how the whole thing looked like it was sinking back into the ridge. He was too old to climb the trail anymore, knees gone from decades in the mines. so he asked me to go. I was 34 then, living in Asheville, working construction, no kids, no real ties. Figured a weekend of hard labor in the mountains would clear my head. I packed a chainsaw, loppers, gloves, a shovel, and enough food to last longer than planned. Drove up the parkway on a Saturday morning when the leaves were just starting to turn, reds and golds bleeding into the green like slow fire. The air was crisp, sharp enough to sting your lungs, the kind of day that makes you feel clean. The family cemetery sits high on a shoulder above the gardens, a small clearing ringed by pines and laurel, maybe 20 graves total, most from the 1800s. The oldest stone was for my great-great-grandfather, 1842-1901, the letters worn smooth by rain and time. I parked at the pull-off, shouldered my tools, and hiked the quarter-mile trail that wound up through rhododendron thickets. The path was overgrown, ferns brushing my legs, spiderwebs catching on my face. When I reached the clearing, the sun was high, light filtering through the canopy in long, slanting beams. The stones stood quiet, tilted, moss creeping up their bases. I set to work. I started at the edges, cutting back blackberry canes and saplings that had rooted too close. The chainsaw buzzed loud, then quieted as I switched to hand tools. Sweat soaked my shirt, but the air stayed cool, carrying the scent of crushed green and dry pine needles. I moved from stone to stone, clearing around each one, reading the names as I went, my people, names I'd heard in stories but never met. Around the far side, near where the ridge dropped sharp into the hollow, I found it, an extra plot. No stone, no marker, just a low mound of fresh turned earth, maybe 3 feet by 6, grass barely starting to take, still thin and pale like new skin over a wound. The surrounding ground was hard-packed, old leaves matted down, but this spot was soft, recently disturbed. The mound rose higher than the flat earth around it, edges crisp, like someone had piled the dirt careful and deliberate. I stood there, shovel in hand, staring. The dates on the nearest stones went back to the 1880s, 1910s, nothing recent. No one in the family had been buried here since the 50s, far as I knew. I figured maybe a cousin I didn't know about, someone who'd passed quiet and wanted to rest with kin. Or a mistake, old survey lines off by a few feet. I didn't dig, didn't want to know, just cleared around it careful, like it deserved the same respect as the marked ones. Finished late afternoon, packed my tools, hiked down, and drove to the cabin my uncle kept a few miles lower on the ridge. Small place, 1 room with a loft, wood stove, propane lights. I'd stayed there before. Built a fire, ate beans from a can, sat on the porch watching dusk settle over the mountains. The quiet was deep, broken only by the occasional barred owl far off in the trees. I went to bed early, sleeping back on the cot, window cracked to let in the cool air. I woke around 2 to the sound of digging. Slow, steady scrapes, metal on earth, rhythmic, deliberate, not loud, not frantic, just persistent, coming from the direction of the cemetery up the ridge. I lay still, listening. The fire had died to embers. The cabin was dark except for faint moonlight through the window. The scraping went on, scrape, pause, scrape, like someone working careful, not wanting to be heard. My heart started thudding heavy. I told myself it was an animal, fox maybe, digging for roots. But the rhythm was too even, too human. I got up, pulled on boots, grabbed the flashlight and my uncle's old 410 from the corner, stepped out quiet, the night cold enough to bite, frost already glittering on the grass. The sound carried clear on the still air. I walked the trail toward the cemetery, boots soft on the pine needles, flashlight off to keep my eyes adjusted. The digging stopped when I was halfway up. Silence. I waited. Nothing. I clicked the light on, beam cutting through the dark. The cemetery looked the same, stones pale in the moonlight, clearing empty. But the mound, the unmarked one, was bigger, higher, fresh dirt piled around the edges, like someone had added a full wheelbarrow's worth since afternoon. The grass on top was torn in places, roots dangling. I stood there, breath fogging, listening. No sound but my own pulse and the faint wind moving through the pines. I swept the light around. No tracks, no footprints, just the soft earth where I'd walked earlier, now undisturbed. I backed away slow, shotgun loose in my hands, and returned to the cabin. Didn't sleep, sat by the window with the light off, watching the ridge until dawn. Morning came gray and damp. I hiked back up with coffee in a thermos, needing to see it in daylight. The mound was smooth again, no fresh dirt, no torn grass, just a low swell of earth, grass thin and even, like nothing had happened.
But in the center, pressed clear into the soil, was a small handprint, child-sized, fingers splayed, palm flat, deep enough to hold a little dew, too small for an adult, too perfect. I knelt, touched it careful. The dirt was cool, damp, like it had been made hours ago. My stomach turned slow. I looked around. No other marks, no footprints leading to or from the spot, just that one print, small and deliberate. I asked around the holler that afternoon, stopped at the store down near the parkway, talked to the old woman behind the counter who'd known my family for generations. Anybody passed lately, burial up on the ridge? She shook her head slow. Ain't nobody been put in that ground since your great uncle in '54. Family plots closed. Why? I told her about the mound. She looked at me long, eyes tired. Some things get buried quiet, some don't stay buried. She didn't say more. I drove to the next house, an old man who'd worked with my grandfather. Same answer. No recent deaths, no burials. Nobody knew anything, or nobody was saying. I covered the mound with leaves that evening, raked them thick from the surrounding woods, trying to hide it, to make it look like nothing. Packed my things, locked the cabin, drove down the mountain before full dark. The ridge felt different in the rear view, higher, darker, like it was watching me go. I haven't been back since. The family plot is still there, I reckon, brush creeping in again. But every time I drive the parkway past Craggy Gardens, something pulls at me, a small, quiet urge to turn off, hike up that trail, clear the leaves, and look at the mound, see if it's grown, see if another handprint has joined the first, see if whatever's under there is still waiting, patient, silent, for the next edition, for whatever comes next. I don't stop. I keep driving, but the pull never quite leaves. And sometimes late at night when the house is still and the wind moves through the trees outside my window, I hear it again. Slow, steady scrapes, not loud, not close, just there, in the back of my head, like someone working careful in the dark, adding to something that was never meant to be finished, waiting, always waiting. And I wonder how long I can keep pretending I don't hear, how long before I turn the truck around, walk back up that ridge, and help them finish the job. Because some graves don't stay empty, and some things don't stay buried. They just wait for the right person to come along and notice.
I remember those drives home from the mill in Hot Springs like they were etched into the dashboard of my old Ford. It was late 2016, the kind of fall where the days stay warm enough to work in shirt sleeves, but the evenings drop fast, leaving frost on the windshield by morning. I'd been pulling shifts at the lumber yard for 12 years, same route every day. Down the mountain on 209, through the gorge where the French Broad runs cold and narrow, then up the other side to my trailer outside Marshall. The road is tight, cliffs on one side, guardrail and river on the other, trees crowding close enough that branches scrape the mirror if you don't hug the center line. My truck radio had always been finicky in there. FM stations cut out 5 miles in, only one weak AM signal came through clear. Some ghost station playing bluegrass from the 50s, fiddle and banjo, high lonesome voices singing about hard times and home. No call letters, no DJ chatter most nights, just the music, faint and steady, like it had been waiting for me to drive into range. One Tuesday in October, the rain started around 4, steady and gray, the kind that turns the asphalt slick and black. I left the yard at 6, cab smelling of wet sawdust and coffee gone cold. The gorge swallowed the light early, headlights bounced off wet rock walls, wipers slapping a slow rhythm. I turned the radio on low, hoping for distraction. The signal came in strong almost immediately, stronger than usual. A song I knew too well, The Lonesome River, the same one my mother used to hum while she ironed on Sunday afternoons. Her voice was soft, always a little off-key, but she'd sing it like it was hers. I smiled, thinking the station had dug up an old Carter family cut. Then the song ended, and a man's voice came on. Deep, slow, mountain drawl. No accent I could place exactly. Evening, folks. Looks like rain's settling in for the night. Tomorrow's forecast, overcast, highs in the mid-50s, chance of showers in the afternoon. Drive careful out there on 209. There's going to be a bad one around mile marker 14. Pickup versus guardrail, single vehicle. Driver okay but shook up. Watch the curves.
I laughed out loud, sharp and sharp. Some gimmick, local station trying to be clever, predicting wrecks like a joke. But the voice was calm, matter of fact, like he was reading the paper. No music after, just static for a second, then silence. I turned the dial, nothing else came in. I drove on, uneasy but telling myself it was nothing. The road felt tighter than usual, the river louder on the left, rain drumming the roof. I passed mile marker 14 careful, hands tight on the wheel. Nothing happened. I got home, showered, ate, slept. The next afternoon, the call came from dispatch. Single vehicle accident on 209, mile 14. Pickup slid on wet leaves, hit the guardrail. Driver walked away with cuts and a sprained wrist, exactly as the DJ said. I sat in the break room with my coffee gone cold, staring at the wall. No one else had heard it. I asked around. Static for them or country from Knoxville. Just me. I tried to tune in again the next week. Nothing. Dead air. The station had vanished like it had never been there. I drove with the radio off after that, listening to the rain, the tires, the engine, but the quiet felt heavier somehow, like something was waiting for me to turn it back on. Weeks passed. November came, colder, the gorge filling with fog most evenings. I left the mill late again, sky already dark by 5:30. The road was empty, headlights cutting through mist that hung low over the water. I drove careful, hands at 10 and 2. About halfway through the gorge, the radio clicked on by itself. No knob turn, just sudden static, then that same voice, deep, patient, familiar now. Evening again, folks. Cold night coming, roads slick, watch the bridges. Daniel Ray, you're headed home safe tonight. Keep it steady, we'll be listening. My name, full name, the one only my mother ever used when she was mad or worried. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared at the radio like it had teeth. The dial was still off. I reached over, turned the knob hard. Click, silence. But the voice lingered in my head, calm, like he'd said goodnight to an old friend. I drove the rest of the way in the dark, windows up, heat blasting, no sound but the rain and my breathing. When I got home, I sat in the truck for 10 minutes, engine running, lights on, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. I kept the radio off after that. Every drive through the gorge, knob turned all the way left, volume down. But sometimes, on quiet nights, when the fog rolls thick and the river murmurs louder than usual, I catch myself reaching for the dial anyway, wondering if it's still there, waiting, wondering what else it knows. Tomorrow's weather, next week's headlines, the fight I had with my sister last Christmas, the way I left the porch light off the night my father died because I couldn't stand to see the empty chair. The voice never sounds angry, never urgent, just patient, like it's got all the time in the world to wait for me to tune back in. I still drive that road, still work the mill, still come home to the same trailer, same quiet, but I don't laugh it off anymore, and when the rain comes steady and the gorge feels deeper than it should, I feel it listening, not the radio, something in the air, in the trees, in the river running alongside me, something that remembers my name, something that knows the road better than I do. And sometimes, when the night is long and the fog presses close, I hear it again, faint, through the static in my head. Daniel Ray, headed home safe tonight. Soft, calm, waiting for me to answer, waiting for me to turn the knob, waiting for the day I finally say hello back. I haven't yet, but I know it's still there, and it's patient. The mountains always are.
I remember that turkey hunt in the spring of 2018. Like the woods held on to me longer than they should have. It was early May, the dogwoods just finishing their bloom, petals scattered white across the forest floor, like spilled milk. I'd been hunting the head of Caney Fork since I was old enough to carry a shotgun, a stretch of hollow up near the Tennessee line, where the ridge drops sharp and the turkeys strut along the creek bottoms. The land belongs to the family still, old timber rights, a few acres of hardwoods in Laurel Hell, but no one lives there anymore. My grandfather hunted it until he couldn't walk the hills, then passed the knowledge down. I went alone that Saturday, figuring one good bird would fill the freezer and quiet the restlessness that had been gnawing at me for weeks. I left the truck at the gravel pull-off just after dawn, shotgun slung over my shoulder, calls in my vest, thermos of black coffee. The air was cool, damped with night mist, smelling of wet leaves and the faint mineral tang of the creek. I walked the old logging trace for a mile, quiet, listening for gobbles. Nothing answered at first. The woods were still waking up, squirrels chattering, a pileated woodpecker drumming far off. Around 9, I set up against a big poplar. Owl hooted a few times, waited. A tom answered once, distant, then shut up. I moved deeper, following the ridge down into the hollow where the creek cuts through. The turkey sign was everywhere, scratchings in the leaves, fresh droppings, feathers. I called again. Nothing. By late afternoon, the light started to slant, golden through the canopy, and I knew I was pushing it. One more ridge, I told myself, then back. Sunset came fast in the hollow. The ridge shadows stretched long, swallowing the trail. I started back up, but the path looked wrong. More laurel than I remembered. The creek farther left. I stopped, checked my bearings. The compass said north, but the slope felt off. I pushed on, figuring I'd hit the logging road soon. The woods darkened quick. No moon yet. I pulled the headlamp from my pack, kept it off to save battery. That's when I saw the light. A pale yellow glow moving slow through the trees ahead, about 50 yards off. Lantern light, steady, warm, the kind you get from an old kerosene lamp with the wick turned low. Not a flashlight beam, no harsh white, just soft, flickering gold. I figured another hunter, someone else after turkeys, maybe working the same ridge. I called out, voice low. Hey, you out there? No answer. The light kept moving, same pace, parallel to my direction. I called again. Silence. I started toward it, picking careful through the underbrush, shotgun ready but not raised. The lantern held distance, never closer, never farther, like it knew I was following. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes. The lantern stayed ahead, bobbing gentle, leading me down a draw I didn't recognize. The creek was louder now, rushing over rocks. I stopped, listened. No turkey, no birds at all. The woods had gone quiet except for the water and my own breathing. I turned the headlamp on, swept the beam. Trees, laurel, the same ridge I'd been circling. I knew this hollow. I'd hunted it since I was 16. But the trail was wrong. The light moved again, slow, patient. I followed. Another half hour. The lantern never sped up, never slowed. I called out twice more. Nothing. My legs started to ache, boots heavy with mud. The lantern led me around a bend, then another. Same ridge, same creek. I realized it then. We were circling. The same hollow, the same slope, looping slow. I stopped dead. The lantern stopped too. Hung there in the trees, steady, like it was waiting for me to decide. My mouth went dry. I turned back, started retracing my steps. The lantern followed. Not fast, not aggressive. Just matched my pace, stayed the same distance behind. I picked up speed, walked faster, then jogged, branches whipping my face, laurel tearing at my vest. The lantern kept up. No sound of footsteps, no voice, just that pale glow, floating through the dark, always there in the corner of my eye. I ran then, full out, breath burning, shotgun banging against my back. The woods blurred. I tripped once, went down hard, knees in mud, got up, kept going. The light stayed behind me, never gaining, never falling away. I remember that hike up Black Balsam in early April 2016, like the mountains still have a piece of me tucked away somewhere in the laurel. It was one of those perfect spring days that fool you. Sun warm on your neck, sky so blue it hurts to look at, air crisp with the smell of pine sap and wet earth waking up after winter. I'd been itching to get out since the snow melted, needed the quiet after a long winter of too many night shifts at the hospital and not enough sleep. The Art Loeb Trail had been calling me for months. I'd hiked sections of it before, but never the full climb to Black Balsam Knob alone. No better time than a clear Saturday when the crowds hadn't started yet. I packed light. Day pack with water, granola, a windbreaker, my phone on airplane mode. Left the truck at the trailhead off 215 just after 8, started walking. The trail climbs steady through spruce and fir, the ground soft with pine needles, ferns brushing my calves. Birds were loud, juncos flitting low, a pileated woodpecker drumming somewhere high. I felt good, strong, the way you do when the body remembers what it's for. About 2 miles in, the path opens onto the bald, grass rolling like waves, views dropping sharp into the valleys below. I stopped to breathe, sweat cooling on my back. The wind moved through the grass, soft, almost like whispering. I kept going, following the white blazes up toward the knob. Halfway up the final rise, where the trail dips into thick rhododendron before climbing again, I heard it. A small voice. A little girl. "Daddy?" It came from the rhododendrons to my left, clear, high, scared. Not loud, but close enough I could picture her standing there, small hands twisting together, eyes wide. My heart kicked hard. I stopped, turned. "Hello?" Nothing. Just wind in the leaves. Then again, softer, more desperate. "Daddy, where are you?" I called back. "I'm here. Are you okay? Stay where you are." My voice sounded thin in the open air. I stepped off the trail, pushed through the first tangle of rhododendron. The bushes were dense, branches springy, scratching my arms. The voice moved, still to my left, but farther now. "Daddy, please." I pushed harder, following the sound, heart thudding. "Keep talking. I'm coming." The rhododendron swallowed light, turned the world green and shadowed. I called again. The voice answered, but it had shifted. Behind me now, back toward the trail. I turned, pushed through more branches, thorns catching my shirt. Every time I closed the distance, it slipped away, always just out of sight, always calling. "Daddy, I'm scared." I searched for almost an hour. Sweat soaked through my shirt, breath ragged. The sun was dropping faster than it should have, light slanting long and gold across the bald. I stopped, listened. The voice kept coming, fainter now, but still there, soft, pleading. "Daddy." I realized then I was alone on the mountain, with no one but the wind and whatever was coming. No footprints in the soft dirt, no broken branches, no child. Just the voice, moving, leading, waiting for me to follow deeper. I turned back. The trail felt longer going down. The voice followed, always at the edge of hearing, getting fainter with every step, but never stopping. "Daddy, please." I hiked faster, almost running the last mile, boots pounding the dirt. The trailhead appeared through the trees just as the sun touched the ridge. I reached the truck, hands shaking as I fumbled the key. Sat inside, doors locked, engine running, listening. The voice was gone. Silence, just my breathing and the tick of the cooling motor. I drove straight to the ranger station in Waynesville, told the woman at the desk what happened. Small girl, lost in the rhododendrons, calling for her father. She checked the logs, called dispatch. No missing children reported that week. No reports at all. No one else had seen or heard anything. She looked at me with that careful sympathy rangers learn. Sometimes the wind carries voices funny up there, echoes off the rocks. People hear all kinds of things when they're alone. I nodded, thanked her, left. I didn't sleep well that night. The voice stayed in my head, small, scared, patient. I told myself it was wind, or a bird, or my mind playing tricks after too many hours alone.
but I knew better. Something had been there, calling from the rhododendrons, leading me deeper into the tangle. Not angry, not threatening, just lost, just asking. I still hike. I still go up into the balsams when the weather's good, but I don't go alone anymore. I take friends, or I stick to the open balds, never drop into the thick laurel where the light dies fast. And when I'm on the trail by myself, because sometimes I have to be, I listen careful. For the wind, for birds, for anything that sounds like a small voice asking for help. It comes back sometimes, not often. Late in the day, when the sun is low, and the shadows stretch long across the grass. Soft, distant. Daddy. I stop, look around, nothing. Just the mountains, the wind, the quiet. I keep walking, faster. But the voice follows for a little while, faint, patient, like it's still waiting for someone to answer, like it's still out there, small and scared, hoping this time I'll turn back and find it. I never do. I keep walking. But I wonder how long I can keep walking away. How long before I stop, turn into the rhododendrons, and call back. I'm here. Because part of me knows it's still there, still calling, still waiting. And the mountains have a way of keeping things that get lost. They hold them close, patient as stone, until someone comes looking. And sometimes when the trail is empty, and the light is fading, I feel the pull, soft, insistent, asking me to come find it. I haven't yet, but I hear it. I always hear it, and I don't know how long I can pretend I don't.
I found the Polaroid in the fall of 2022, up in the attic of the old house my father still owns outside Morganton. He'd asked me to go through some boxes after the doctor told him the cancer was spreading faster than they'd hoped. He didn't say it outright, just handed me a key and told me to take whatever I wanted. "Some things belong to you now," he said, voice thin, eyes already looking past me. I went alone one Saturday when the leaves were turning hard red and gold, the air sharp enough to sting your nose. The attic smelled of dust, old cedar, and the faint sweet rot of things stored too long. Boxes stacked high, labeled in my mother's careful handwriting. Christmas ornaments, baby clothes, honeymoon. That last one stopped me. I pulled it down, sat on the bare floorboards where the light came in dusty shafts through the small window. Inside were ticket stubs from the train to Asheville, a dried corsage, a few postcards, and at the bottom, the Polaroid. My father and mother on a dock at Lake Lure. Summer light bright on the water behind them. He was 28, hair still dark, arm around her waist. She was smiling, head tilted against his shoulder, eyes crinkled at the corners. They looked happy in the way people only look in old photos, before life had time to wear the edges down. I stared at it a long time, thumb brushing the glossy surface. Something about her smile felt familiar, like a memory I couldn't quite place. I slipped the photo into my pocket, took the box downstairs, and left the rest for another day. I kept it on my dresser after that, propped against the lamp in my small apartment in Morganton, simple white frame I bought at the drugstore. Every morning when I woke, I'd glance at it while I made coffee, the way you do with things that anchor you. It was a good picture. Reminded me of them before the arguments, before the hospital stays, before the quiet years when they barely spoke. I liked seeing them young, whole. About a week later, I noticed the change. It was subtle. I was brushing my teeth, half asleep, when I looked up and caught her eyes in the photo. They seemed wider than before. Not dramatically, just a fraction. Enough to make her look startled instead of happy. I blinked, rubbed my eyes, chalked it up to the light or the early hour. But the next morning it was the same. Wider still, her mouth tighter, lips pressed thin, like she was holding something back. I took the photo down, held it under the bathroom light.
Dad's smile was unchanged. Same easy grin. Same crinkle at the eyes. But her face had shifted. Not blurred. Not faded. Just different. The skin looked paler. The shadows under her eyes deeper. I told myself it was my imagination. The way grief plays tricks with memory. I put it back on the dresser, face down. The next day it was worse. Her eyes were wide open now, pupils large, like she'd just seen something terrible. Her mouth was open slightly, not smiling anymore, more like a silent gasp. The lake behind them looked darker, the water flat and still, the trees on the far shore leaning in. I carried the photo to the kitchen window, turned it in the sunlight. No damage, no chemical burn, just her face changing, day by day, while Dad stayed frozen in that same happy moment. I started checking it every morning, then every few hours. Each time, another small shift. Eyes wider, paler skin, expression tightening into something close to terror. By the end of the week, she looked like someone who had just realized she was about to die. I couldn't look away. I sat on the floor in front of the dresser one night, lamp on, staring until my eyes burned. Dad's arm was still around her, casual, protective, but she was leaning away now, just a fraction, like she wanted to pull free but couldn't. The dock looked narrower, the water closer. I whispered her name, like she might hear me. Nothing changed. The photo stayed the same, but she kept changing. I drove to my father's house the next Sunday. He was thinner, skin gray, but still sitting in his chair by the window. I showed him the picture. Remember this? Lake Lure, your honeymoon. He took it carefully, hands shaking a little, stared a long time, then shook his head slow. We never took photos at the lake. Your mother hated having her picture made on water. Said it made her feel like she was falling. He handed it back. That's not us. I drove home with the photo on the passenger seat, wrapped in a cloth. That night I sat at the kitchen table, lamp low, and burned it in the sink. The edges curled black. The colors bled, faces disappearing into ash. I watched until it was nothing but gray dust, then ran the water, watched it swirl down the drain. I thought that would end it, but the dream started. I wake on the dock at Lake Lure, late afternoon, sun low, water dark and flat. I'm holding the camera, old Polaroid, heavy in my hands. My father stands beside me, smiling the same smile from the picture, arm around a woman whose face I can't see yet. She has her back to me. I lift the camera. She turns slowly. It's me, my own face staring back, eyes wide, mouth open in that same silent gasp. I'm wearing my mother's dress from the photo, hair the same way. I try to lower the camera. Can't. The shutter clicks. The picture slides out. I watch my own face change, eyes widening further, paling, terror growing, while my father smiles beside me, unchanged, like he doesn't see it happening. I wake sweating, heart numbing. Every time the same dream. Every time I see myself on that dock, taking the photo, watching my own face shift into fear. I don't keep pictures of myself anymore. I avoid mirrors when the light is low. I tell myself it's grief, memory playing tricks, the mind filling in gaps with dread. But sometimes, late at night when the apartment is quiet, and the wind moves soft through the pines outside my window, I feel it. A small cold certainty that somewhere, in a drawer, or a box or an attic I haven't opened yet, another photo is waiting, one I haven't found, one where I'm smiling beside someone I love. And every day, in the dark, my face is changing, eyes wider, mouth tighter, waiting for the moment I finally look, and see the terror that's been there all along. I haven't looked, not yet, but I know it's coming, and when it does, I wonder if I'll recognize the person standing next to me, or if they'll be smiling the whole time, unchanged, while I fall apart frame by frame. The mountains keep their secrets well, and some pictures don't fade. They just wait for you to see what's really there.
I remember the summer of 2008. The way you remember a cut that should have healed, but keeps reopening every time you flex your hand. My cousin Travis's farm sat deep in Madison County, tucked against the shoulder of a ridge where the French Broad makes a slow bend before dropping into the gorge. The place had been in the family since the 1800s. Two-story frame house, barn half-leaning, fields that rolled gentle, then fell sharp into woods. Travis had taken it over after his daddy died, kept the cows, grew hay, patched the roof when he had to. I went up most weekends that year because my own life in Asheville had started to feel too small, too loud. The farm was quiet. The kind of quiet that settles into your bones and makes you notice how much noise you carry inside. The well was out behind the barn, hand dug back when the house was new, lined with fieldstone, covered with heavy oak boards nailed crosswise and weighted with an old tractor tire. Grandma always said not to play near it, but we were teenagers by then, 16 and fearless, looking for anything to break the boredom. One humid July night, after supper, Travis dared me to drop a stone and count the seconds until it hit. We pried up one corner of the boards, just enough to make a gap. The darkness down there smelled of wet earth and cold stone, a smell that stays in your nose long after you leave. I picked up a smooth river rock from the creek, dropped it. It fell fast, plink, then a hollow thud, quicker than I expected. Then something else came back up. My own voice. Clear, calm. Stop. We froze. Travis looked at me, eyes wide in the lantern light. I laughed first, short, nervous. Said it was an echo, the way sound bounces funny in deep holes. He laughed too, but it sounded thin. We put the boards back, weighted them, went inside to play cards until the fireflies died. Neither of us mentioned it again that night. The next evening, Travis went into town for feed. I stayed behind. The house was empty, supper dishes drying in the sink, crickets loud through the screen door. I couldn't stop thinking about the well. The voice had been mine. Same inflection, same flat drawl I use when I'm tired. I told myself I needed to prove it was nothing, just acoustics, just the hollow playing tricks. I took the lantern and a handful of stones from the creek bed. The night was warm, heavy with the smell of cut hay and the river far below. I knelt at the well, pried the boards up again. The darkness waited, patient. I dropped the first stone, same quick fall, plink, thud. Then my voice rose again, sharper this time. I said stop. The words came up clear, angry, like someone shouting from the bottom of a long hallway. My hand froze on the next rock. I leaned over the gap, lantern held high. The light barely reached the walls. Rough stone, moss slick, dropping into nothing. No face, no shape. Just black. I called down soft. Who's there? Silence. My own breathing loud in my ears. I dropped another stone, faster this time, like I could outrun the answer. Plink, thud, then the voice louder, edged with something raw. Stop. I said stop. I scrambled back, boards clattering. The lantern swung wild, shadows jumping across the barn wall. I replaced the boards, hand shaking so bad the tire slipped twice before it seated. I ran inside, locked the door behind me, sat at the kitchen table until Travis got back. I didn't tell him. What would I say? That the well answered in my voice, that it sounded angrier the second time. He would have laughed, or worse, believe me. The next morning I asked him about the well, casual, like I was just curious. He was milking, back to me, head against a cow's flank. Capped it years ago, he said without turning. After little Jimmy fell in, 78, my uncle's boy, 5 years old. Screen was rotten. He leaned over to drop a pebble, lost his balance, gone quick. Daddy said the well talked back after that. Never believed it. Just stories to keep kids away. He stood up, wiped his hands on his jeans. Why? I shrugged. Thought I heard something last night. Echo, probably. He looked at me a long moment, then nodded slow. Echoes are funny in deep places. Best leave it covered. I left the farm that afternoon. Drove down the mountain with the windows up, radio loud. I didn't go back for a long time. Travis sold the place in 2015 after the barn burned from lightning. I heard the new owners filled the well with gravel, poured concrete over it, said it was safer that way. But I still hear it sometimes. Late at night, when the house is quiet, and the wind moves soft through the pines outside my window. A small stone falling, plink, thud, then my own voice rising from somewhere deep. Stop. Not loud, not angry anymore. Just tired. Patient. Like someone who's been waiting a long time for me to listen. I don't drop stones in wells anymore. I don't lean over dark places to hear what comes back. But I know it's still down there, in the dark under all that gravel and concrete. Waiting.
breathing. Saying my name in my own voice when the nights are long and the silence is deep enough to carry sound. I wonder sometimes if little Jimmy ever stopped falling. If he's still down there, dropping pebbles, listening for someone to answer. If the well keeps what it takes. If it keeps talking back until someone finally says, "I'm here." I haven't said it yet. I keep my distance. But the voice is patient. It has time. And every time I pass a quiet place, a deep hole, a still pond, a cellar door, I feel the pull. Soft, insistent, asking me to come closer, to listen one more time. I don't, not yet. But I know it's waiting. And I know the sound of my own voice saying stop will never leave me. Because some things you hear in the dark don't echo. They just wait for you to come back and finish the conversation. And when the nights are quiet, and the wind moves low across the ridge, I hear it again. Small, patient, tired. Stop. And I wonder how long I can keep walking away before I finally lean in and answer.
I moved into the trailer in the cove near Mars Hill in late August 2023, right after the divorce papers dried and the apartment lease in Asheville felt too much like a cage. The place was cheap, tucked at the end of a gravel road that dead-ended against a laurel thicket, with a long view down the hollow where the sun set red behind the ridge every evening. It was quiet, too quiet sometimes, but quiet was what I wanted. No neighbors close enough to hear arguments through the walls, no one knocking to borrow sugar. Just me, the trailer's thin walls, and the mountain air that smelled of pine and damp earth after every rain. Across the road sat the other trailer, older, faded green aluminum, porch sagging under the weight of years. The old man was there every evening when I got home from work. Same chair, same position, straight-backed wooden rocker, hands folded in his lap, eyes fixed straight ahead. He never turned his head when my truck crunched up the gravel, never lifted a hand in greeting, never spoke, just sat, staring across the narrow dirt road toward my side of the cove. At first, I thought he was watching birds, or the light on the ridge, or maybe nothing at all. But after a few weeks, I realized he was watching me, or at least his eyes were always in the direction of my trailer, unblinking, steady, like he'd been waiting for me to arrive and had no intention of looking away now that I had. I tried to be neighborly the first month, waved once when I was unloading groceries. No response. Waved again a week later, slower, more deliberate. Nothing. His face stayed the same, thin, lined, skin the color of old parchment, eyes pale blue and open wide. I started to feel foolish waving at a man who might have been blind, or deaf, or simply done with people. I stopped trying. We settled into a silent understanding. He sat on his porch every evening until full dark, and I pretended not to notice. One night in mid-October, the temperature dropped hard after sunset. I came home late, headlights sweeping across his porch. The light was off, no glow from the bare bulb that usually hung above his chair. But he was still there. Same posture, same unblinking stare. The road was empty, the cove black except for my truck's beams. I killed the engine, sat in the dark for a minute, watching him through the windshield. His eyes were locked on my window, not on the truck, on the place where I would be once I stepped inside. I felt the skin on the back of my neck crawl, slow and deliberate. I got out, walked to my door, didn't look back. Inside, I turned on the kitchen light, then the living room, then the bedroom, kept the curtains open. I told myself it was nothing. Old man get forgetful. Maybe he liked the dark. Maybe he couldn't afford the electricity anymore. But I kept the lights on until I went to bed, and even then I left the bathroom one burning. The next morning, his trailer was empty. Windows boarded with plywood, rough cut, nails driven at odd angles.
The rocker gone from the porch. No sign of furniture inside through the cracks. The place looked abandoned, like it had been that way for months. I walked across the road, boots crunching frost, and knocked on the door. No answer. I knocked again. Silence. I called out his name, though I didn't know it, and the echo came back thin from the hollow. I drove down to the store at the mouth of the cove, the one with the single gas pump and the potbelly stove. The woman behind the counter, gray hair, name tag that said Doris, knew everybody. I asked about the old man across from me. She looked up slow, like she'd been expecting the question. Old man, across from the green trailer? Yeah, sat on his porch every night, never spoke. She wiped her hands on her apron, eyes narrowing. Ain't nobody lived in that trailer since last March. Old Mr. Lunsford passed in his sleep, beginning of April, 6 months ago. Heart gave out. Family boarded it up the week after the funeral. Nobody's been back since. I stood there, coffee going cold in my hand. I saw him, every night, same chair, same spot. Doris looked at me a long time. Then she said quiet. Some folks see things after they've been alone too long. Mountains do that, hold on to people longer than they ought to. I went home. The boarded trailer sat across the road like a blind eye. I didn't sit on my porch that evening, kept the curtains drawn, but I felt it anyway, the weight of eyes on the house. Not angry, not curious, just there, steady, unblinking. The porch stayed empty after that. No chair, no old man, no light, but every evening when the sun dropped behind the ridge and the shadows stretched long across the cove, I felt watched. Not by something in the trees, not by something in the dark, by something that remembered the rhythm of sitting on that porch, rocking slow, staring across the road at the trailer where a stranger now lived. Something that hadn't left when the body did. I still live there. Rent's cheap. The quiet is still what I need. But I don't sit outside after dark anymore. I keep the porch light on, even when I'm not home. I keep the curtains closed tight. And when I walk to my truck in the morning, I don't look across the road. I don't want to see if the rocker has come back. If he's sitting there again, same posture, same stare. If he'll finally lift a hand in greeting. Or if he'll just keep watching, silent, unblinking, until I'm the one who stops moving, until I'm the one who stays.
I remember the weekend I went to help my aunt clean out her house in Spruce Pine, like the dust still clings to my skin. It was late March 2022, the kind of early spring where the air is cold enough to bite, but the sun promises warmth. It doesn't quite deliver. Aunt Clara had been alone in that big frame house since Uncle Ray passed in 19, and the place was starting to feel heavier than it should. Too many rooms, too many things left exactly where they fell. She called me because my mother was gone, and I was the closest thing to family left who could still climb stairs without stopping to catch breath. "Just help me sort the attic," she said. "I can't go up there anymore. Knees won't let me." I told her I'd come Saturday, packed a thermos of coffee, work gloves, and the quiet hope that a day of labor might keep my own thoughts from circling too close. The drive up was familiar, twisting roads through Mitchell County, past the old mica mines and the roadside stands selling geodes and boiled peanuts. Spruce Pine sits in a bowl of mountains, the kind of town that feels like it's always waiting for something to happen. Clara met me on the porch, thinner than last Christmas, sweater hanging loose. We didn't talk much about Ray, or about how the house smelled of old paper and camphor. We just carried boxes, sorted clothes, stacked dishes. By afternoon we were both tired, but the attic still waited. The pull-down stairs groaned when I yanked the cord. Dust drifted down like slow snow. I climbed up with the flashlight, the beam catching rafters thick with cobwebs, trunks wrapped in oilcloth, a dressmaker's mannequin missing an arm. The air was colder up here, stale, like it hadn't been stirred in years. Clara called from below, voice muffled. "Just look for the cedar chest. Anything else can stay." I found the chest easy enough, pushed against the far wall under the eaves, but beside it, propped against a stack of suitcases, was the mirror. Oval, tall as my chest, heavy wood frame carved with vines that had darkened with age. The glass was spotted at the edges, silvering gone in places, but the center was clear. I wiped it with my sleeve, curious. My reflection looked back, same tired eyes, same flannel shirt dusted with attic grit. I turned to call down to Clara, then glanced back. The reflection blinked a second late. I froze,
My hand was still raised from wiping the glass. In the mirror, it moved slower, like through water. I blinked again. The reflection's eyelids came down half a beat behind mine. I stepped back. It kept staring, eyes fixed on where I had been, mouth still parted like it was about to speak. I moved left. The reflection stayed put for a moment, then followed, lagging, the motion jerky, like an old film reel skipping frames. My heart started thuddy heavy, the way it does when you know something is wrong, but can't name it yet. I said my own name quiet. The reflection's lips moved late, forming the same syllable a second I did. I stepped closer. It stared, unblinking now, while I blinked twice. I reached out, touched the glass. Cold. My fingers left no mark. In the mirror, my hand lingered a moment longer, then withdrew slower than mine had. I backed away fast, breath shallow. The reflection watched me go, head tilting slightly, like it was curious why I was leaving. I grabbed a sheet from a nearby box, old muslin, smelling of mothballs, and threw it over the frame. The mirror disappeared under white folds. I stood there, listening to my own breathing loud in the quiet attic. Clara called up again. "You all right?" I told her yes, just found the chest. I carried it down, left the mirror where it was, didn't mention it. We finished the day sorting, ate soup, talked about nothing important. I drove home after dark, the road twisting through black pines, headlights cutting sharp tunnels. That night I dreamed I was the one in the mirror. I stood inside the glass, cool and smooth against my back, watching the attic through warped silver. My body, the one that should have been me, stood outside, looking in. He blinked. I blinked late. He stepped back. I followed slower, lagging. He reached for the sheet. I reached too, but my hand moved through air that felt thick, heavy. He draped the muslin over the frame. Darkness came sudden, soft. Then the sheet slipped, fell to the floor. I could see again. He was gone, down the stairs, footsteps fading. I stayed, staring out at the empty attic, waiting, always waiting, watching the place where he used to stand. I woke sweating, sheets tangled, heart pounding like I'd been running. The clock said 3:14 a.m. I sat up, turned on the lamp. The room looked normal, but when I went downstairs to get water, I saw it. The sheet from the dream, the same muslin with the faint mothball smell, lying on the living room floor, not folded, not dropped, spread out like someone had shaken it open and let it fall. I picked it up. It was real. Dust still clung to the folds. I hadn't brought anything from the attic. I hadn't carried it home. I stood in the kitchen with the sheet in my hands, listening to the house breathe, the soft tick of the clock, the hum of the refrigerator, the faint creak of floorboards settling, nothing else. I folded the sheet, put it in the hall closet, and didn't go back upstairs until morning. I told myself it was coincidence, a similar sheet, a dream so vivid I confused it with memory. But I knew better. The mirror had seen me, and part of me had stayed behind. I haven't been back to Clara's house since. She passed last year, quiet, alone, the place sold to strangers. I didn't go to the auction. I didn't want to see what was left in the attic. But sometimes, when the house is still and the light is low, I catch my reflection in a window, in a mirror, in the glass of a picture frame. I watch careful. I blink. I wait for the lag, for the second when my own eyes don't follow quite right. It hasn't happened yet, but I feel it coming, the slow creep of something watching from the other side, patient, unblinking. I don't cover mirrors anymore. I don't avoid them. I look, I wait, because I know something is still up there in that attic, under the dust and the rafters, staring out through warped glass, watching the place where I used to stand, waiting for me to come back, waiting for the day I finally step close enough, lean in, and see myself looking back, late, slow, eyes wide, mouth open like someone who has just realized they can't get out. I haven't gone back, but I hear the attic stairs creak in my sleep sometimes, soft, patient, calling me up, and I wonder how long I can keep walking past mirrors, keep pretending the reflection is still mine, how long before I look too long, and the lag catches up, and the one outside is the stranger, walking away while I stay, watching, waiting, always waiting. Because some things you see in the dark don't let you leave, they keep you, they watch, and when the light is right, and the house is quiet, they wait for you to notice that the face staring back isn't quite yours anymore, not yet, but soon, always soon.
I built that bonfire the way my father taught me. Small at first, careful layers of kindling, then the bigger splits, letting the flames find their own rhythm. It was late September 2021, the air already sharp enough to make your lungs ache, the leaves just starting to curl at the edges. My cabin sat high on the shoulder of Mount Mitchell, far enough from the parkway that the night swallowed sound, close enough that the ridge felt like it belonged to me. I'd bought the place 3 years earlier after the divorce, needing somewhere the quiet couldn't be interrupted by anyone else's breathing. The backyard was nothing but a cleared patch of hard-packed dirt, ringed by black spruce and the dark wall of woods that dropped away into the gorge. I liked the fire there. It felt contained, safe. That evening, I stacked the wood high, struck a match, watched the flames catch and climb. The smell of burning pine sap filled the air, warm and familiar. I sat on the old camp chair with a beer, letting the heat push back the chill creeping up from the ground. The fire burned clean, bright, throwing long shadows across the yard. Around 10, I raked the coals together, poured 2 buckets of water from the rain barrel, listened to the hiss and pop as the last flames surrendered. Steam rose thick, then thinned. I stirred the ashes with a stick until they were dark and wet, no glow left anywhere. Satisfied, I went inside, locked the door, turned off the lights, and climbed into bed. The house was cold. I pulled the quilt tight and fell asleep to the sound of wind moving through the spruce. I woke sometime after midnight to the smell of smoke. Not faint, not lingering. Fresh, sharp, the way wood smoke smells when the fire is alive and hungry. I sat up, heart already thudding. Through the bedroom window, orange light flickered across the yard. I crossed the room, parted the curtain. The bonfire was burning again. Bright, tall, flames licking high. The same stack of wood I'd doused hours earlier now fully involved, coals glowing red beneath. No wind to feed it, no new fuel. Just the fire, roaring like it had never been put out. I stood there a long minute, breath fogging the glass, telling myself it was embers, a pocket of heat that had smoldered underground, flared back when the night cooled. But the flames were too high, too steady. I pulled on boots, grabbed the flashlight and the empty bucket, stepped outside. The cold hit hard, but the fire's heat reached me before I crossed half the yard. The coals were alive again, orange and pulsing. I poured the last of the rain barrel water over it. The flames hissed, flared higher for a moment, bright, angry, then settled, still burning. I stood there, bucket dangling from my hand, watching. The fire didn't dim. It held, steady, like it was daring me to try again. I didn't sleep after that. I sat on the porch steps, wrapped in a blanket, staring at the flames. They burned clean. No crackle, no sparks jumping. Just a slow, patient roar. I kept expecting the wood to collapse, the coals to blacken. They didn't. The night stretched long. The stars wheeled overhead. The ridge stayed dark. Around 4, the fire finally began to die. Slow, reluctant, like it was choosing when to go. By first light, the flames were gone. Only coals remained, dark and wet, steam rising thin in the cold air. I walked over when the sun touched the ridge. The pit was soaked, black, no heat left. I stirred the ashes with the stick again. Nothing glowed, nothing smoldered. Satisfied, I turned to go inside. Then I saw the footprints. Bare feet, small, perfect impressions pressed into the soft dirt around the fire pit. Toes splayed, heels deep, like someone had stood there a long time. Weight shifted from one foot to the other. The prints circled the pit once, twice, then walked away, straight into the woods, disappearing under the spruce where the ground turned hard. No shoes, no socks, just skin on earth, deliberate, unhurried. I followed them a few steps. They didn't waver. They didn't fade. They knew where they were going. I backed away fast, heart in my throat, went inside, locked the door, sat at the kitchen table with coffee I didn't drink, staring at the window where the fire had burned all night. I didn't call anyone. What would I say? That my fire came back to life, that something barefoot walked around it and left,
I cleaned the pit that afternoon, raked the ashes into a pile, spread fresh dirt. The prints were gone by then, smoothed by my own boots. But I knew they'd been there, knew they'd walked into the woods like they belonged there. I still have the cabin. I still go up most weekends when the weather holds. I still build fires, but I don't leave them unattended. I stay until the last coal is cold, until the ashes are dead, until there's nothing left that could flare back, and I watch the ground around the pit. Always watch. The woods are quiet now. The spruce stand tall. The ridge stays dark. But sometimes late at night, when the house is still, and the wind moves soft through the trees, I smell smoke. Not faint, not distant. Fresh, sharp, the same smell that woke me that night. I don't go to the window. I don't open the door. I just lie there, listening to the crackle that isn't there, waiting for the moment the fire decides to come back. It hasn't yet, not since that night, but I feel it out there, in the dark between the trees, patient, waiting for the next time I build a fire, and turn my back, waiting for the coals to glow again when they shouldn't, waiting for bare feet to circle the pit, slow and sure, leaving prints that lead away into the woods. I don't know what it wants, don't know why it comes back, but I know it remembers the shape of my boots, the rhythm of my breathing, the way I stood and watched until dawn, and I know it's still out there, barefoot, silent, patient as the mountain itself. Sometimes I think about walking down to where the prints disappeared, following them into the spruce until the trail ends. Sometimes I think about standing at the edge of the woods and calling out, asking what it wants. I haven't done it yet, but the nights are getting longer, the cold is settling in, and when the wind carries that faint smell of smoke through the cracks in the walls, I feel the pull, soft, insistent, asking me to come outside, to build the fire again, to turn my back just once. I don't, not yet, but I hear the crackle in my sleep. I see the footprints in the dark behind my eyes, and I wonder how long I can keep the fire cold before it decides to burn anyway, before it steps out of the woods, barefoot, and stands beside me at the pit, waiting for me to look down and see my own prints circles right next to the ones that aren't mine. Because some fires don't die when you douse them. Some fires wait, patient, hungry, always coming back. And when the nights are long and the ridge is quiet, I feel it out there, glowing in the dark, watching the cabin, waiting for me to step outside one more time. I haven't yet, but I know it's only a matter of time.
I remember the drive down from Banner Elk that evening in late October 2018, like the chill of it never quite left my skin. The sun had already dropped behind the ridge, leaving the sky a bruised purple, the kind that makes the mountains look closer, sharper, like they're leaning in to watch you leave. I'd been up there visiting an old college friend, stayed longer than planned because the conversation turned to things neither of us wanted to say goodbye to just yet. By the time I started down the mountain, the road was empty. No taillights ahead, no headlights climbing up. Just me, the old Subaru, and the winding two-lane blacktop that drops fast out of the high country toward the valley. The heater was on low, blowing warm against my legs. The radio was off. I liked the quiet up there, the way the engine note changed with every curve, the tires humming steady on the pavement. I was tired, eyes heavy from the day, but the road kept me sharp. Around the third big switchback, where the guardrail ends on the passenger side and the drop is straight into dark trees, I glanced in the rearview mirror out of habit. There was a man in the back seat. Old, bearded, wearing a heavy wool coat that looked like it belonged to another century, dark, threadbare at the elbows, collar turned up. His face was pale, lined deep, eyes fixed straight ahead through the windshield, not looking at me, not looking anywhere in particular, just sitting there, hands folded in his lap, perfectly still. My heart slammed once, hard. I kept driving, hands tight on the wheel, telling myself it was a trick of the light, fatigue, the way shadows pool in the back of a car at dusk. I turned my head slow, looked over my shoulder. Empty. The seat was bare. No coat, no beard, no one. Just the folded blanket I kept back there, the empty
empty water bottle rolling against the door. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Looked back at the mirror. He was there again. Same posture, same coat, same unblinking stare forward, like he hadn't noticed I'd looked away, like he was waiting for me to keep driving. I pressed the gas harder. The engine whined up the revs. The road twisted, tires biting the pavement. I kept glancing in the mirror, every few seconds, quick, like I could catch him moving when I wasn't looking. He never did, never turned his head, never spoke, just sat there, silent, patient. As the miles dropped away behind us, the heater kept blowing warm. The dashboard lights glowed green. Everything normal except the man in the back seat who wasn't supposed to be there. I tried talking. Low, calm, the way you talk to something you don't want to startle. Who are you? Nothing. What do you want? Silence. The road kept descending, curves tightening, the gorge falling away steeper on the right. I drove faster than was safe, tires chirping on the turns, headlights sweeping wild across rock walls and trees. He stayed exactly where he was, no sway with the motion, no reaction to the speed, just sitting, watching the road ahead through me. About 10 miles down, the gas station at the bottom of the mountain came into view. Bright neon, 2 bumps, a single car parked at the air machine. I pulled in fast, tires crunching gravel, parked under the lights, killed the engine, sat there a minute, hands still on the wheel, breathing hard. Then I turned around slow. Empty again. The back seat was bare, the blanket undisturbed. I got out, walked around the car once, looked in every window. Nothing. I opened the rear door. Cold air rushed in, but the seat was empty. I reached in, touched the fabric. Warm, not body temperature. Hotter, like someone had been sitting there long enough to leave heat behind. I pulled my hand back like I'd been burned. I stood under the gas station lights, heart still hammering, watching my own reflection in the window. No one else around. The attendant was inside, head down over his phone. I didn't go in, didn't ask if he'd seen anyone. Just got back in the car, locked the doors, and drove the rest of the way home with every light on, checking the mirror every few seconds. He never came back that night, never appeared again in the rear view, but the warmth lingered in the seat for hours. I could feel it through fabric when I sat down the next morning. Faint, but there, like a handprint left in cooling wax. I still drive that road sometimes. Have to. It's the only way down from Banner Elk without adding an hour. I keep the radio loud now. I keep the dome light on when it's dark. And every time I get in the car, every single time, I check the back seat before I turn the key. I look in the mirror first, then turn around, make sure it's empty. I tell myself it's habit. I tell myself it's nothing. But I know better. Because some nights, when the road is empty and the ridge is dark, I feel the weight in the back seat. Not heavy, not obvious, just there. A slight shift in the springs when I take a curve. A faint warmth against the leather when I stop at a light. I don't look back anymore. I keep my eyes on the road. I keep driving. But I know he's still there sometimes, sitting quiet, bearded, coat heavy on his shoulders, staring forward through the windshield, not speaking, not moving, just riding along, patient, waiting for the moment I finally turn around and meet his eyes in the mirror, waiting for me to ask who he is, where he's going, why he chose my car. I haven't asked yet. I keep driving, keep checking the empty seat, keep feeling the warmth that shouldn't be there, and I wonder how long I can pretend I don't notice the extra weight in the back. How long before I look in the mirror one night and see him looking back, not forward anymore, but at me, straight at me, smiling maybe, or not smiling, just waiting. Because some passengers don't get out when the ride ends. They stay, they wait, they ride the dark roads with you until you finally acknowledge they're there. I haven't acknowledged him yet, but I feel him every time I turn the key, every time I check the mirror, every time the road drops away into the night and the ridge closes in behind me. He's patient. The mountains are patient. And I know he's not going anywhere. Not until I look back. Not until I say something. Not until I let him in all the way. I keep driving, but the seat stays warm, and the mirror stays empty. For now.
I remember the trip to Shining Rock, like the cold still lingers in the hollow of my shoulder, the place where the hand used to rest. It was early June 2020, one of those rare weeks when the high country clears after days of rain, the air sharp and clean, every pine needle dripping, every rock face glistening like it had just been washed. I'd been feeling the weight of everything. The job that had gone remote and then quiet. The apartment walls that seemed to close tighter every month. The way my own voice sounded strange when I spoke aloud to no one. I needed the trail. Needed the kind of silence that swallows sound and gives nothing back. Shining Rock Wilderness had always been that place for me. Remote enough that the crowds thinned to nothing after the first few miles. Wild enough that you could believe the mountains still belonged to something older than us. I drove up from Asheville on a Thursday afternoon, truck bed loaded with the same gear I'd used since college, lightweight tent, sleeping bag rated to 20 below, small stove, enough food for 4 days. The trailhead lot was nearly empty, just 2 other cars, both with out-of-state plates. I shouldered the pack, locked the truck, and started walking. The path climbed steady through mixed hardwood, the ground soft with last year's leaves, the air thick with the smell of wet bark and fern. By late afternoon I reached the bald, the big rock dome rising smooth and pale against the sky. I found a sheltered spot on the lee side, away from the wind, pitched the tent in a small bowl of grass, and built a fire in the old stone ring someone had left years before. The first night was ordinary. I cooked rice and lentils over the small flame, watched the stars sharpen overhead, listened to the wind move through the spruce like distant breathing. I crawled into the tent early, quilt pulled tight, and slept hard, the kind of sleep that comes when the body knows the day is done and the mountains are keeping watch. The second night, the hand came. I was crouched by the fire, stirring oatmeal in the little pot, the light low and orange across my hands. The air had cooled fast after sunset. The ridge was black against the last blue in the sky. I felt it then, firm pressure on my right shoulder, warm through the fleece, fingers splayed wide, thumb resting just above the collarbone. Not light, not tentative, solid, like someone standing behind me had reached down, steadying themselves or steadying me. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. The fire popped. The wind sighed. I turned slow, expecting nothing but darkness. Nothing was there. Just the empty grass, the black wall of trees, the faint silver of moonlight on the rock dome. I sat still, heart thudding heavy, waiting for the touch to come again. It didn't. I told myself it was imagination, the way muscles cramp after a long day, the way cold air plays tricks on skin. I finished eating, banked the fire, climbed into the tent, and lay awake a long time, listening to the night. Eventually, sleep took me. The dream was ordinary, walking the trail, footsteps behind me, turning and seeing only wind. The third night, it returned. Same spot, same pressure. I was sitting on the ground, back against my pack, drinking tea from the tin cup, watching the coals glow. The hand settled again, warm, deliberate, fingers curling slightly like they were getting comfortable. I didn't turn this time. I just sat, feeling the weight, the heat of skin against my shoulder through 2 layers of fabric. My pulse was loud in my ears. I spoke, voice low, barely above the crackle of the fire. "Who are you?" The hand squeezed once, firm, not painful, like an answer. Then it lifted. Gone. The spot on my shoulder stayed warm for minutes after, like the shape of the palm had been branded into the muscle. I didn't sleep much, lay in the tent, flashlight beside me, listening to the wind, to the small sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. Nothing else. No footsteps, no breathing, just the memory of the hand, heavy and warm, resting there like it belonged. I packed at first light, broke camp fast, no breakfast, just coffee gulped cold from the thermos. The trail down felt longer than it should have. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to see someone following, tall, quiet, moving through the spruce without sound. Nothing, just the path, the rocks, the wind. I reached the truck by noon, threw the pack in the bed, drove away without stopping. I still camp. I still go into the high country when the weather holds. But I don't go alone anymore. I take friends, or I stay on the crowded trails, or I pitch the tent where the light doesn't die so fast. And when I sit by a fire at night, I keep my back to something solid, a rock, a tree, the tent wall. I don't leave space behind me. I don't trust the dark there. But sometimes, when the night is still and the fire is low, I feel it again, light at first, like a brush of fingers, then firmer, warmer, resting there, just above the shoulder blade, thumb curling gentle against the neck. I don't turn around. I don't speak. I just sit, breathing slow, waiting for it to lift. It always does, eventually. But the warmth stays longer each time, lingers into the morning, into the drive home, into the quiet hours when the house is dark and the wind moves soft through the pines outside my window. I feel it then, small, patient,
resting there like it never really left, like it knows I'll come back to the high country one day, alone again, fire low, back to the open dark. I haven't yet, but I know it's waiting, patient as the ridge itself, waiting for the night I finally turn around and look, waiting for me to ask again, who are you? Waiting for the squeeze that might be an answer, or might be a question. I still feel it. Light, resting there. And I wonder how long I can keep pretending it's only memory. How long before I sit by another fire, alone, and let the hand stay. Let it rest. Let it decide when to lift, or when to hold on. The mountains are patient. They always have been. And some things that touch you in the dark don't let go just because you walk away. They wait. They rest. They remember the shape of your shoulder. And they come back when you're ready to feel them again. I haven't gone back alone, but the trail is still there. The bald is still waiting. And sometimes, when the wind is right and the night is quiet, I feel the hand settle once more. Warm, firm, patient. I don't turn around. I just breathe and wait for it to decide. Because I know it will. Eventually.
I remember the winter of 2020, when the snow came heavy and stayed. It started the day after Christmas, fat flakes drifting slow at first, then thickening until the world outside my grandma's house on Bear Wallow Mountain turned solid white. Power lines sagged under the weight, the road up the hollow was gone, and I was alone. Grandma had passed the previous spring, quiet in her sleep, the way she'd always said she wanted. And the house had come to me. No one else in the family wanted it. Too remote, too much upkeep, too many memories. I drove up from Asheville the week before to check on things, clear the gutters, make sure the pipes wouldn't freeze. Then the storm hit, and the county plows never made it past the lower gap. I was snowed in for 5 days. The house and I. Just us. The place hadn't changed much since I was a boy. Clapboard siding weathered to silver gray, tin roof patched in places, a long porch facing the hollow where the wind always found a way through the cracks. Inside smelled of old pine, wood smoke, and the faint must of things stored too long. The kitchen had the same linoleum, same oilcloth on the table, same wood stove that took forever to heat the back rooms. Down the narrow hall past the bedrooms was the root cellar door, thick oak, heavy iron latch, set into the floor like a trapdoor. Grandma always said it only opened from the outside. Keeps things where they belong, she'd tell me when I was small and curious. I'd never questioned it. Never needed to. The first night the storm raged outside, wind howling through the eaves like something trying to get in. I built the stove high, ate soup from a can, read by lantern light until my eyes burned. Around 11 I banked the fire, checked the doors, and went to bed in the front room on the old sofa. Didn't want to sleep in her room yet. The house settled slow, pipes ticking as they cooled, wind rattling the windows. I fell asleep listening to the snow piling against the porch. I woke just after midnight, to the sound of hinges. Slow, deliberate creak. Metal on metal. Dry and rusty. The root cellar door. I lay still, breath held, waiting for the house to explain itself. Another creak. Then footsteps. Slow. Heavy.
coming up the wooden stairs from below. One step. Pause. Another. The treads groaned under weight. I sat up, heart slamming against my ribs, the room dark except for the faint red glow from the stove. I called out, voice cracking. Who's there? Nothing. Just the footsteps. Steady. Climbing. I grabbed the lantern, lit it with shaking hands, light spilling yellow across the floorboards. The cellar door was still shut tight. The latch was down. The chair I'd pulled over earlier sat untouched. But the footsteps reached the top, stopped right behind the door. I stared at the oak planks. Silence. Then breathing. Soft. Shallow. Patient. On the other side. Not loud. Not labored. Just there. Like someone standing close, waiting for me to invite them in. I backed away, grabbed the kitchen chair, wedged it under the knob. The breathing didn't change. No rattle of the latch. No push against the wood. Just that quiet rhythm. In and out, steady as a metronome. I sat on the sofa, lantern at my feet. Shotgun across my lap, Grandma's old double barrel, unloaded for years, but loaded now. The house creaked in the wind. The stove popped. The breathing stayed. All night. Patient. Waiting. I didn't sleep. Every time I started to drift, the breathing would shift, just a little, closer to the crack under the door, like it was leaning in. I talked to her once, low. I don't know what you want. This is Grandma's house. She's gone. No answer. The breathing never faltered. Dawn came slow, gray light seeping through the curtains. The footsteps retreated, slow, down the stairs, one by one. Hinges creaked again. Then silence. I waited 10 minutes, 20, then I moved the chair, eased the latch up. The door opened smooth, no resistance. Cold air rose from below, carrying the smell of damp earth and old potatoes. Snow tracked across the floorboards, small, bare footprints, child-sized, leading from the open door into the kitchen, then stopping. They didn't go anywhere else, just stood there, melting slow into puddles on the linoleum. 5 prints, like someone had stepped inside, looked around, and decided not to stay. Yet. I swept the snow out, mopped the floor, tried to erase it. The prints were gone by noon, but the cold lingered in that corner of the room. I spent the day splitting wood, checking the stove, anything to keep moving. Night came early. I built the fire high, sat with the shotgun close, listening. Around midnight, the hinges creaked again. Footsteps climbed slow, breathing at the door. The chair was back under the knob. I didn't call out this time, just waited. It went on for 3 more nights, same pattern. Footsteps up, breathing, waiting. Each morning the door opened, chair moved, small prints in snow tracked across the floor, melting away by midday. On the 4th night I left the chair off, sat in the kitchen with the lantern low, door unbarred. The footsteps came, reached the top, stopped, breathing closer now, right against the crack. I whispered, "If you want in, come in." Nothing. No bush, no sound but the breathing, patient, like it had all the time in the world. After an hour I retreated. Door stayed shut. No prints in the morning. The snow finally eased on the 5th day. The road cleared enough for a plow. I packed quick, locked the house, drove down the mountain without looking back. I haven't been inside since. The house sits empty, or supposed to. I pay a neighbor to check it, keep the pipes from freezing. But every winter when the snow comes heavy and the wind howls through the hollow, I feel it. That soft breathing on the other side of a door I can't see. Patient. Waiting. Grandma never mentioned it. When I asked her once years ago why the cellar door only opened from outside, she just smiled thin and said, "Some things in old houses like to come inside when it's cold." She never explained, never needed to. I understand now. Some things don't knock. They wait for the latch to be left up. They wait for the fire to burn low. They wait for the house to be quiet enough to hear them breathing.
My kitchen had the same linoleum, same oilcloth on the table, same wood stove that took forever to heat the back rooms. Down the narrow hall, past the bedrooms, was the root cellar door, thick oak, heavy iron latch, set into the floor like a trapdoor. Grandma always said it only opened from the outside. Keeps things where they belong. She'd tell me when I was small and curious. I'd never questioned it.
I remember the first time I heard the whistle, clear enough to know it wasn't the wind or a distant truck on the highway. It was late November 2019, the kind of cold that settles into your joints and stays there. I'd bought the little house in Haywood County 2 years earlier. Nothing fancy, a single wide with a stick-built addition set back off a gravel road that dead ends against the ridge. The old Norfolk Southern line runs right behind the property, maybe 50 yards from the back door. Rails rusted brown, ties black with age, overgrown with blackberry and sumac. Train stopped running through here in the mid-'80s when the last coal tipple closed down. Locals say the tracks are still owned, but nobody uses them. Nobody's supposed to. The first night it happened, I woke at 3:07 a.m. to that long, low moan cutting through the dark. Not close, not yet, but coming. The kind of whistle you feel in your chest more than hear with your ears. 3 long blasts, drawn out, mournful, like something grieving. I lay there, breath held, waiting for it to fade. It didn't. It grew louder, steadier, until the sound filled the room, vibrating the window glass. Then it stopped, right behind the house. I heard the engine idling, a low, heavy thrum that rattled the floorboards. No lights came through the curtains, no headlamp glow, just the rumble, patient, like whatever was out there had all night to wait. After maybe 5 minutes, the throttle opened slow, the sound pulling away down the line, fading into the hollow until the quiet came back thicker than before. I told myself it was a truck on the road below, or maybe a neighbor's generator, or the pipe settling. Anything but what it sounded like. A freight train that hadn't run in 35 years, stopping behind my house at 3 in the morning. It didn't happen again for months. Long enough that I almost convinced myself I dreamed it. Then
Then came March, another cold snap, ground still frozen. I woke at 3:12 to the same whistle, long, drawn, getting closer. Same pattern, same pause behind the house, same slow departure. This time I got up, pulled on boots, grabbed the flashlight. The back door opened quiet. I stepped onto the porch. No wind, no moon, just black woods and the faint silver of frost on the grass. The whistle had stopped, but the engine sound was still there, low, steady, idly, like it was waiting for me to come down. I walked the path through the yard, past the old burn barrel, down to the tracks. The flashlight beam shook in my hand. The rails were cold, rusted, but when I swept the light along them I saw something wrong. Fresh ballast, new gray stone, spread clean between the ties. The ties themselves looked dark and oiled, like they'd been replaced recently. No weeds, no leaves, just smooth, used track, stretching both ways into the dark. I stood there, breath fogging, listening. The engine idled louder, closer, though nothing was visible. Then the whistle blew again, sharp, right in front of me, so close the sound pressed against my chest like a hand. I ran, boots slipping on frost, flashlight bouncing wild. I didn't stop until I was back inside, door locked, back against it, heart hammering so hard I tasted copper. The whistle sounded one more time, faint now, pulling away, then silence. I didn't sleep, sat in the kitchen with all the lights on until dawn, listening for the sound of wheels on rails that weren't supposed to be there. After that it came every few months, not regular, not predictable, always around 3, always when I was alone, when my sister had left after a visit, when the neighbor's truck wasn't parked at his place down the road. The whistle would start far off, mournful, growing, stop behind the house, idle, leave slow. I never went down to the tracks again. I kept the curtains drawn at night. I kept the radio on low when I couldn't sleep, but the quiet always went out. One night last winter, January 2024, the whistle came closer than ever. I woke to already loud, the engine rumble shaking the windows. It stopped right outside. I heard the brakes hiss, the coupling slack take up with a metallic clank. Then footsteps, heavy boots on the ballast, walking slow along the side of the house. Not fast, not hurried, just deliberate, like someone checking the property line. They paused at the back door. I lay in bed, frozen, listening. No knock, no voice, just the sound of someone standing there, breathing slow, waiting. Then the footsteps retreated, the engine throttled up, the whistle blew once, sharp, and the sound pulled away down the line, fading into the hollow. I didn't move until morning. When I finally went outside, the frost was unbroken, no footprints in the grass, no marks on the ballast, just the old rusted rails, weeds growing between the ties again. But I knew what I'd heard, knew what had stood outside my door. I still live here, rent's paid, the house is mine. But I don't sleep through the night anymore. I wake at 3, listen for the whistle. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it doesn't. When it does, I stay inside. I don't go to the back door. I don't look. I just wait for it to idle, wait for the footsteps, wait for the slow departure. I don't know who or what drives that train. Don't know why it stops here, why it waits, why it only comes when I'm alone. But I know it's patient. The mountains are patient. And every time the whistle sounds, long and mournful, getting closer, I feel the weight of something that remembers this place, something that used to run on these rails, something that still does, in the dark, when no one else is watching. I haven't sold the house, haven't moved, but sometimes when the night is still, and the frost glitters on the grass, I stand at the back window, curtains parted just enough, and listen. The whistle hasn't come in months, the rails are quiet, but I know it's out there, idling in the dark somewhere down the line, waiting for the next time I'm alone, waiting for the next 3 o'clock, waiting for me to finally step outside and answer the call. I haven't yet, but I feel it coming closer, patient, steady. Always coming back, and I wonder how long I can keep the door locked before I open it, before I step down to the tracks, and see what's waiting there in the dark, engine idling, whistle ready to blow one more time. Because some things don't stop running just because the timetable says they should. Some things keep going, and they remember where they used to stop. They remember who used to live here. And they're patient. They have all night. They have forever. I remember the trip to Shining Rock, like the cold still lingers in the hollow of my shoulder, the place where the hand used to rest. It was early June 2020, one of those rare weeks when the high country clears after days of rain, the air sharp and clean, every pine needle dripping, every rock face glistening like it had just been washed. I'd been feeling the weight of everything, the job that had gone remote and then quiet, the apartment walls that seemed to close tighter every month, the way my own voice sounded strange when I spoke aloud to no one. I needed the trail, needed the kind of silence that swallows sound and gives nothing back. Shining Rock Wilderness had always been that place for me, remote enough that the crowds thinned to nothing after the first few miles, wild enough that you could believe the mountains still belonged to something older than us. I drove up from Asheville on a Thursday afternoon, truck bed loaded with the same gear I'd used since college, lightweight tent, sleeping bag rated to 20 below, small stove, enough food for 4 days. The trailhead lot was nearly empty, just 2 other cars, both with out-of-state plates. I shouldered the pack, locked the truck, and started walking. The path climbed steady through mixed hardwood, the ground soft with last year's leaves, the air thick with the smell of wet bark and fern. By late afternoon I reached the Bald, the big rock dome rising smooth and pale against the sky. I found a sheltered spot on the lee side, away from the wind, pitched the tent in a small bowl of grass, and built a fire in the old stone ring someone had left years before. The first night was ordinary. I cooked rice and lentils over the small flame, watched the stars sharpen overhead, listened to the wind move through the spruce like distant breathing. I crawled into the tent early, quilt pulled tight, and slept hard, the kind of sleep that comes when the body knows the day is done and the mountains are keeping watch. The second night, the hand came. I was crouched by the fire, stirring oatmeal in the little pot, the light low and orange across my hands. The air had cooled fast after sunset. The ridge was black against the last blue in the sky. I felt it then, firm pressure on my right shoulder, warm through the fleece, fingers splayed wide, thumb resting just above the collarbone. Not light, not tentative, solid, like someone standing behind me had reached down, steadying themselves or steadying me. I froze, spoon halfway to my mouth. The fire popped, the wind sighed. I turned slow, expecting nothing but darkness. Nothing was there, just the empty grass, the black wall of trees, the faint silver of moonlight on the rock dome. I sat still, heart thudding heavy, waiting for the touch to come again. It didn't. I told myself it was imagination, the way muscles cramp after a long day, the way cold air plays tricks on skin. I finished eating, banked the fire, climbed into the tent, and lay awake a long time, listening to the night. Eventually sleep took me. The dream was ordinary, walking the trail, footsteps behind me, turning and seeing only wind. The third night it returned. Same spot, same pressure. I was sitting on the ground, back against my pack, drinking tea from the tin cup, watching the coals glow. The hand settled again, warm, deliberate, fingers curling slightly like they were getting comfortable. I didn't turn this time. I just sat, feeling the weight, the heat of skin against my shoulder through 2 layers of fabric. My pulse was loud in my ears. I spoke, voice low, barely above the crackle of the fire. "Who are you?" The hand squeezed once, firm, not painful, like an answer. Then it lifted. Gone. The spot on my shoulder stayed warm for minutes after, like the shape of the palm had been branded into the muscle. I didn't sleep much, lay in the tent, flashlight beside me, listening to the wind, to the small sounds of the night, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of an owl. Nothing else. No footsteps, no breathing, just the memory of the hand, heavy and warm, resting there like it belonged. I packed it first light, broke camp fast, no breakfast, just coffee gulped cold from the thermos. The trail down felt longer than it should have. I kept glancing behind me, expecting to see someone following, tall, quiet, moving through the spruce without sound. Nothing, just the path, the rocks, the wind. I reached the truck by noon, threw the pack in the bed, drove away without stopping. I still camp, I still go into the high country when the weather holds, but I don't go alone anymore. I take friends, or I stay on the crowded trails, or I pitch the tent where the light doesn't die so fast. And when I sit by a fire at night, I keep my back to something solid, a rock, a tree, the tent wall. I don't leave space behind me. I don't trust the dark there. But sometimes, when the night is still and the fire is low, I feel it again,
light at first, like a brush of fingers, then firmer, warmer, resting there, just above the shoulder blade, thumb curling gentle against the neck. I don't turn around. I don't speak. I just sit, breathing slow, waiting for it to lift. It always does. Eventually. But the warmth stays longer each time, lingers into the morning, into the drive home, into the quiet hours when the house is dark and the wind moves soft through the pines outside my window. I feel it then, small, patient, resting there like it never really left, like it knows I'll come back to the high country one day, alone again, fire low, back to the open dark. I haven't yet, but I know it's waiting, patient as the ridge itself, waiting for the night I finally turn around and look, waiting for me to ask again, who are you? Waiting for the squeeze that might be an answer, or might be a question. I still feel it. Light, resting there. And I wonder how long I can keep pretending it's only memory. How long before I sit by another fire, alone, and let the hand stay. Let it rest. Let it decide when to lift, or when to hold on. The mountains are patient. They always have been. And some things that touch you in the dark don't let go just because you walk away. They wait. They rest. They remember the shape of your shoulder. And they come back when you're ready to feel them again. I haven't gone back alone, but the trail is still there. The bald is still waiting. And sometimes, when the wind is right and the night is quiet, I feel the hand settle once more. Warm, firm, patient. I don't turn around. I just breathe and wait for it to decide. Because I know it will. Eventually.